Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave, the home of the brave?
Brenda, would you please do the roll call?
Sure. President Klein-Jerome,
Yes.
Vice President Poston.
Here.
Director Barnes.
Here.
Director Beck.
Here.
Director Hayes.
Here.
Director Potts.
Here.
Director Ward.
Here.
Thank you.
Director Hayes, would you please read the mission and vision statement?
I'll be happy to do so. The Davenport Community School District is dedicated to growing excellence in academics, the arts, and athletics for every child by ensuring the highest quality education in an environment shaped by our diverse community, preparing our students to be lifelong learners and productive citizens. Vision statement: education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you. Director Ward, would you please read the guiding principles?
Opportunity. We provide abundant opportunities to empower students to reach their full potential, academically, creatively, and socially. Collaboration. We foster an environment that allows students, families, and community stakeholders to come together for the betterment of our students' education and future. Transparency. We share relevant and important information with our students, families, and the community to maintain open and productive communication.
Thank you. Superintendent Schneckloff, would you please read the goals?
Tonight, we're going to focus on goal number 4 to foster the innovative use of finances, facilities, and staff.
Thank you. Student board members.
I'm Lucy from Davenport West. Buffalo Elementary wants to share that they've been doing a great job maintaining their attendance goal of 95% or higher. They have a year-to-date goal average of 95.4%. And then at Davenport West, our newspaper and yearbook editors and some of the publication staff, 2 weeks ago we went to the National Journalism Conference in Nashville. So that was really fun. We got to learn a lot of things about journalism. And then in addition to that, our yearbook just won Yearbook of the Year at the state conference, which is equivalent to a state title for sports.
Hi, my name is Eden Miller. I'm also from Davenport West. At West, we have a bunch of sports starting up. We have girls and boys basketball, boys and girls wrestling, boys and girls bowling, and boys swimming. And then Wilson wanted to share that they have Girl Scouts that are coming to do projects with our students during recess, and that they had a PBIS rally last week, which was put on by their youth leadership team. And the same thing about attendance. They are currently at a 95.4% average daily attendance rate.
Thank you, both of you.
Hi, I'm Carlin from Davenport Central. I think last weekend or the weekend before was the International Thespian Festival, where we went with the all-district musical Les Mis. At Central, we got first place for sound management for Les Mis. Micah Roldan got second place for solo musical, And then Sophia Marmion got third place for contrasting monologues. And then our International Thespian Festival qualifiers are Micah Roldan, Mirabella Johnson, Ellery Hurley, Ginger Jacobson, Cameron Shumpert, Elena Harper, Shira Malley, and Marissa Bradford. And then over this past weekend was All-State, and all of our district schools competed in that. I don't know all of the exact results, but I do know that Michael Roldan is, I believe, the 7th or 8th person in Central history to get All-State all 4 years for vocal performance.
I'm Adrienne Neely from Davenport Central, and I'd like to mention that our dance team, the Blue Illusion, recently had a performance at North Scott last Friday, and they have state coming up in 10 days now. And our girls basketball team actually had their first game this year against Dubuque Senior. The team has expanded a lot this year from past years, so it's going to be a great season for them. And our DCSD 8th graders recently went to the Junior Achievement of the Heartland Inspire Career Expo. It's a hands-on experience for the students to future pathways, connect with local employers, and to just be hands-on with the career experience.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have a presentation, Facility Master Planning Committee District Leadership Recommendation for Solution for Preschool and Continuum of Care. And I will turn it over to the superintendent.
Thank you. I'm very excited tonight as we continue to look at the horizon of what can our facilities do. Tonight we have our Facility Master Planning Committee with us. One of the things I'm very excited about tonight is we have some parental voices with us to help kind of talk about everyone recognizes Mr. Potts. This is kind of a thing. So anybody that had Mr. Potts as a teacher, now's the time. No, but we are wrapping up a section of the Facility Master Planning Committee, and our team is comfortable making a recommendation to the board. Leading us through this process has been Bray Architects, and tonight John Mahan and Superintendent in Training Corey Williams are going to kind of help lead this presentation. So I'll turn it over to you, and if you would, before you get started, let's do introductions and go down. Talk about the school that you represent and other things that you represent on our committee. So, John, I'll turn it over to you. First, parents, thank you so much for taking your time to come here and be with us. It was awesome to hear your voices and to hear from you all throughout this process, and we're very grateful for the time that you dedicated to it. So, John, thank you.
Yes, thank you for having us all up here tonight. So, you guys know me, John from Bray Architects, Corey Williams.
I'm Tess Farmer. I'm representing Madison Elementary, and I have a first grader there.
Yep. And Corey Williams, I'm the principal at West High School.
Tiffany Stalkup, I'm the preschool principal for the district and also have kids at Bluegrass and Walcott.
Jonathan Reams, representing Harrison Elementary and Wood Intermediate. Have kids in 4th and 6th grade.
I'm Jasmine Guy. I represent Adams. I have a first grader there, and Williams, I have a 6th grader and an 8th grader.
And so these individuals spent a whole lot of time with us in long meetings on mostly Tuesday nights, talking about all the things you're going to see tonight. We had a good representation of district staff you'll see on screen. And then we had representatives from a variety of our buildings. And so one of the things that I thought we would do to start, rather than get into the meat of this, is just let you hear a little bit about the experience held by our parents here. So if anybody wants to jump in first.
I guess I'll go first. All right, so overall, very organized and methodical way of planning and presenting information, especially to parents that may not have the day-to-day knowledge discussions that come with some of the staff and the architect team on this. Overall, from being active military, very similar to the way we do planning. So things were laid out in a structure that was easily to digest and basically easy to take on. Stuff discussed from one meeting into the next meeting and kind of talk back and forth on how those two different focused areas impact one another.
excuse me, for me, I think it was good to hear how all the process works. So from the outside, without having those meetings, it looks like it's just a bunch of decisions being made and kind of the community that really doesn't understand and know it just happens. But the meetings provided a better understanding of how everything takes place versus just, okay, I don't know why they did that. They don't have a reason for it, but there's a reason behind everything. So it was good to kind of be in the know and understand the process better.
I just wanted to say that it was eye-opening because as a parent, you're only looking at things from a parent perspective. So you're looking at your situation and the situation of other families within the school that your child attends. And it was very eye-opening to see things from a staff perspective and some of the obstacles that they have. So things that parents thought would be the best idea, once we had those discussions with staff and administrators, it opened our eyes to other obstacles that we just weren't thinking of. So very informative.
So there was a method to the madness, and we'll try to do a little bit of recap and just let you know a little bit about that process and then what became of that.
All right, so this committee was charged with developing recommendations that will come to the board, and we've hit two areas that were of importance that we're going to look at is our preschool situation and then our continuum of services, and we'll go through that later, kind of what that entails, what that means. And it's been very it was very collaborative working with the community people. We had a much bigger team than this we've met. I mean, these people are giving up time and coming up, and we're not done. This is just the first phase of it. And then the spring, we're going to be going through some other things and making some other recommendations. And so this is just the recommendation that the team came up with. Obviously, this will come in front of the board. But this is a good way because sometimes tough decisions need to be made. You guys you're used to making them, but we have to look at everything as an opportunity. And so I think this lays out some really good opportunities. Our preschool is growing a lot, so we need more room. That's a huge win, and that's a big opportunity for us, and especially moving forward. And then just how we reconfigure and work with our some of our special programs. So what we want to do is just go through the pathways with you and then help show you guys kind of what we determined as a team, and then show you the why behind it and some of the data and some of those kinds of things.
As we close out this presentation, we'll give you a little better synopsis of what the spring semester will hold. I think we've got some exciting developments as we look forward with this. During this process, there were some other things that happened in tandem. So if you recall back in 2022-ish, you all got about 700 or 900 pages of facility assessment documents. We actually went through that again. That should be considered a living document in the district. So on an annual basis, the use of SAVE and PEPAL funds do go to making improvements in the district. A good chunk of those were noted in that prior facility assessment. So we've gone back through and sort of crossed off things that needed to be done. And then, of course, because buildings continue to age, we add things that need to get done. And so just an update of that. We've also updated the capacity assessment. And my next slide will allude to what that is. But we've made some changes in the district, and it's good to recognize how the capacity changes. All this occurred amidst doing the facility master plan committee meetings. We had 4 meetings throughout the fall semester. We're going to shoot for about 4 meetings in the spring semester. We did some other meetings around this, which we'll talk about as we get through the presentation. When we went through the capacity assessment, there was something driving this, and that is what we know from prior years. The overall enrollment in the district is still sliding downward. So not as sharply over the past year, but still a downward trend. So we wanted to kind of capture with less enrollment and then changes made to buildings. We moved 5th graders into our middle school 6th graders into our middle school buildings. That sort of sets up this idea that we should recheck our buildings and get a sense of what does that mean for how we're using our facilities. We'll talk about this more as we get into some of the discussion tonight, and then a good chunk of what's in here will actually be looked at more deeply in the spring semester as well. What this chart shows is if you have every building in the district, the blue line is the actual number of students in the building. The dashed bar is the minimum capacity, and the red line at the top is maximum capacity. There are a few buildings in the district where you are running over capacity. Just the right end of the slide, West High School is slightly over capacity.
And what that looks like for us,
go ahead.
sorry.
Yep.
So, and we all know there's a few Falcons that are sitting at the table right now. We know that, I mean, the building itself holds a lot of students. We've had 1,800, we've had 2,000 students there before. And you look at that and you see us being over capacity and you think, how can we be? Because we're at about 1,400 and some right now enrollment. But the overcapacity is the different programs that we serve. And so a lot of those special education programs and rooms have students with some significant needs. They need their own room, or we have different programs that we run. And so West has quite a few of those. So that's not anything to be concerned about or alarmed about at all. That's just what that means. We have more special programs and it's running fine. We make it work. We're very adaptable. And all of the buildings in the district, we're used to this. We kind of go back and forth. We kind of ebb and flow a little bit. So the students are getting what they need. But that just gives you a little bit of a heads up. That's what that indicates, is when you look at West and you see us as over capacity, but that's not total student enrollments. That has to do with those special programs that we run.
And then some of the board members have had the opportunity to tour schools. You'll probably recall that some of them, even though they look under capacity here, you see a lot of things happening in all the rooms. We're going to talk about that as we get deeper into this. There is a rationale as to why, and there's later in the evening probably some recommendations that'll help make better use of that space. So when we start this process, we're asked to look at preschool. The first thing we have to say is, what's the problem? So what is it that we're trying to solve? So when we really started to dig into this, these reasons were, one, we don't have enough space to actually capture preschool for all of the 4-year-olds in our district. We do serve quite a few, about 500 currently. The majority of those are served at Children's Village West, at Children's Village Hoover, and then we do have some school-based solution throughout the district. If we look at the number of kindergartners enrolling on an annual basis, we're somewhere in the 800 to 900 range, which means we're slightly more than half is what we're currently serving as preschoolers. So there's more that we could capture. There are probably, I think we estimate about 1,500 4-year-olds across the whole city. We recognize that some of them enroll elsewhere, other schools or other districts. But with that 900-ish that enroll in kindergarten, there's room to expand our ability to capture 4-year-olds. We also have a problem in that the way the facilities are currently arranged, our administrator, Tiffany, gets to move around a lot between facilities. And we wanted to make sure that whatever we looked at had a consideration of operational efficiency. Keep in mind when we throw out numbers here, we also have some 3-year-olds and some 5-year-olds that benefit from preschool enrollment. So we tend to just use blanket 4-year-old phrase, but this does include 3s and 5s. We also recognize that there's some barriers that sort of bar people from enrolling in preschool. Cost. So there is a cost for some of what gets serviced as preschool. For example, 3-year-olds have an expense that 4-year-olds don't. Wraparound care costs for families. Transportation can be a barrier. Also, just for people in general, understanding what is out there, what's available, what do I sign up for, how do I sign up? And then on top of that, the district is losing some of their partner sites. Smaller sites in the community have difficulty getting the right kind of instructors or maintaining, their right certification within the state.
We want to create a system as well too, where we have a lot of our students that enter kindergarten, and so you see the number, like there's 1,500 4-year-olds out there, and then not all of them are enrolling. And a lot of our families, because of whatever issue, because of whatever barriers potentially, they may be sending their kid to a daycare or a couple of days a week or something, and they're calling it preschool, and it's just not the same services that they would get through Tiffany's program. And so we want to be able to create a system where there's no barriers. That would be ideal state, right? And we want our kids to be able to attend that. So when they start preschool in Davenport, they start kindergarten, they've had our preschool and they're ready to go. So we're trying to find the best way to maximize what we have to kind of eliminate as many barriers as possible.
So then we took a stab at goals. What are the problems, and how do we think we would want to start looking at solutions? And so when we look at goals, first and foremost, Davenport School District would like to be the first solution provider for our youngest learners in the district. So if we're going to embrace them as they come into kindergarten, why can't we start that relationship that year or 2 years sooner and really start that path for them? We understand that this requires that we need a district-wide solution as it relates to preschool. And when we get into solutions, you'll see what we mean about this. We took a stab and said, if you were going to still sort of take the consideration that there are some partner sites, some partner providers, there are some other partner providers out there, we thought it would be reasonable to shoot for an expansion of capturing about 80 to 90% of those 4-year-olds that enroll in kindergarten. So if you took that 800 to 900, if we take 80 to 90%, we thought that shooting for about 700 was a reasonable number. That gives us the ability to look to growth in the program, and we know that with being full at 500 right now, we won't be turning people away. And then, as I mentioned before, making sure that as we move forward that we're trying to improve or consolidate our operational efficiency. We also think there's some efficiency to be gained as it relates to some of our special education services that we provide to preschoolers as well. So some of how we solve this can make an improvement in those services that our younger learners also benefit from. We wanted to make sure that we have a solution that provides more access to the wraparound care that's available at some of our facilities. We need to be able to very clearly tell our community what's available. So being able to communicate is important, and that hopefully will help get more of those students in. And then hopefully along the way, we can reduce our district overhead. Our current reality, and I covered this very briefly a couple slides ago, we have 2 center-based preschools. Our Children's Village West, which enrolls something around 300. Our CV Hoover, which is in the 150 range of students. Each of those are full standalone facilities. So they have administrative support, nurse, secretary, custodial staff, their own operating cost for those buildings. We have 5 school-based locations. So Buffalo runs a morning preschool. Hayes runs an afternoon preschool. Jackson has a morning program that includes wraparound service. So those students show up in the morning and then stay to the end of the school day. Madison is the flip of that. Those students show up in the morning. They do their afternoon preschool service in that building. And then Truman runs both a morning and an afternoon, so an AM, PM program. We have a typical class size of about 20 students. So when we look at this, we're looking at the number of students in a classroom and the number of classrooms in each of these facilities. That gives us an idea of how many students we're supporting. We noted here that supports are not centralized. So we're not doing the same thing at each of our locations, which means that we're inconsistent with our service, and then our access is inconsistent. So people living in different parts of town don't always have easy access to the same things. A little bit of what we're going to talk about relates to geography. So rather than keep placing things on the district map, we simplified it. So we kind of looked at it in terms of our regions. If we think about our school district having pathway regions, we have our East region, our North region, our West region, and our Western region. We simplified it further and turned it into a simple graphic that represents the geography of the district. And so with that started the considerations of what we hypothesized as we looked forward.
All right, so here's our current reality right now. Again, like John went over a little bit. And if we go through we're not going to hit that again unless you guys have any questions right now. It's the same thing that we talked about. And those services, and I've served, I'm the principal at West right now, but prior to that, I was a principal at Truman for 2 years. And so we had the preschool, same situation where we had a morning and an afternoon. And so as we get through this and as we talk, it's a lot of these scenarios that we're going to provide to you are completely doable. Again, we just want to maximize and we just want to be as efficient as we can.
As we mentioned on the prior description, though, this inconsistent access, if you sort of place these offerings in the region map, you'll see that it feels a little imbalanced. For example, there's 2 centers, one in West and one in East, nothing in North. We have more school-based opportunities in West and less in East, North, and Western. So graphically, this feels inconsistent to us.
A little bit. And we want to have, some equity, like we talked about, just depending on, we don't want it to be a barrier wherever somebody lives within Davenport. They have to make a choice whether they come to a Davenport preschool or they send their kid to some other program and they're calling it the preschool. So that's what we're talking about. So again, our options here are just to kind of maximize what we have right now. So we have 4 options that we want to present to you all. And these are ones that are going to be reviewed, discussed, validated. And then we talked about it a lot before we decided to bring these to the table to you all. And the people on the committee kind of attest to that. We had some really lively and some good conversations around, okay, what do we think? What does that look like? So the first scenario is having 1 centralized children's village center and then 7 regional school-based. So there's going to be pros and cons to each one of those. Scenario 2, 3 regional children's village centers and 1 regional western. So out in that western part where he was talking about the Bluegrass, Buffalo, Walcott area, that's the western one. Scenario 3 is just having 1 centralized children's village center, just 1 big one, and all students would come to that. Scenario 4, all of them would be school-based preschools at each of the elementaries. So again, pros, cons for all. What the committee came up with is, as like we said, we just presented you with 4 different options, and we kind of landed on scenario 1 and scenario 4, thinking that there could be potentially a hybrid kind of a scenario. And so again, if you look at scenario 1, and we'll go over the pros and cons, having the 1 centralized location, and then 7 of the school-based locations, 2 in each region, and then 1 out in the western. So pros are centralized admin. So for Tiffany, she's in 1 location, fosters that good collaboration, variety of choices for our families, centralized support, and so that's special ed. And so when you saw the OT, PT, and SLP, that's occupational therapy, physical therapy, and then speech language therapist, better ability to do the wraparound care. I don't know many families, there's some that can do that half day preschool and then they're good to go, but some of them need some sort of wraparound care, whether it's an hour on either end of it, whatever that looks like. And then again, creating efficiencies with our families, and think about our families whose students go to that kindergarten, and if they were able to maybe be in the same building with their preschooler. So that was kind of the reason behind that. Cons, it's just going to require larger facilities for that single center, reducing quantity of the children's villages. And so is that going to have a staffing impact, and then may require facilities and site modifications for our buildings. Scenario 4, the pros that we have are, again, there's good collaboration between the grade levels, access for families, and then you have a nurse and an admin support already at the building. So that's the one where all the preschools would just run out of our current elementaries. And again, when I was at Truman, I had 2 classrooms similar to what we have now. Very doable. They're just down there in the same hallway with our littles, and they were just kind of part of the building. So they're already in the school. Some of them had their older siblings that went there. So that was kind of a big pro, especially for a lot of our parents here. The cons were you decentralize that support. Again, you kind of spread that out over multiple buildings, lack of collaboration for the teaching staff, lack of classroom staffing efficiency. So is there going to be an issue with that? Special education not supported equally in the buildings. So that's something that would have to be looked at. It might require significant reconstruction and organization of some of our buildings if they're not equipped to handle a preschool room or 2. And then likely require site playground modifications because you have to have different types of playground equipment for preschools. And I'll let Tiffany talk to that more when you guys have us ready for questions. So initial reactions from the committee, preference for scenario 4. However, it was understood that this also presented the highest financial implications. Okay, other very highly desired plan was the scenario 1. Again, further discussed concerns about district-wide access and equity of service. God, I'm making up words. Okay, next slide. Okay, so kind of the hybrid options here. So we talked about, again, that scenario 1 and 2, combining those a little bit. So centralized location, then 7 locations, 7 satellite locations, I guess, with the other elementaries. And then having that centralized, kind of going through that same pros and cons list. And then after further group discussion, the committee centered on a preference for scenario 2. This scenario was felt better provided access for services and programming across the entire district. So this one's a little bit different as well, too. So 2 has the 3 children's villages, 1 in each of the regions, that east, north, and west, and then 1 school base located out in the western region. So this one is a little bit different. So you'll see like 4 they're all located at the elementaries, and then scenario 1 was 1 centralized location, and then scenario 2 is a little bit of that hybrid, okay? The pro is you've got better children's village access for the families, high collaboration between staff, this is a big focus for the district right now with our PLCs and our teacher collaboration. So that's very important. Improved grade level staffing, and then access to care, again, our special ed cares. Again, the cons, it requires several large facilities, decreased administrative efficiency, decreased admin, so that's nurse staff efficiency. So again, you have to figure out, you can only stretch Tiffany so thin, and then you have to be able to collaborate with the other building principals. Security, playground, food service needs, and then required purchase of facilities potentially, and then may require that playground construction. So again, this was kind of where a preference for that number 2. This scenario was felt provided that better access and service programming across the whole district. And the final consensus was that the most appropriate would be kind of a hybrid in between 1 and 2 a little bit. So what am I missing here?
So we'll come back to this in a little bit, but generally, we went through several exercises, a lot of heartfelt discussion, and ultimately the group wanted to provide the board with 2 scenarios. And then they realized that likely the recommendation would be for leadership to figure out how to sort of merge these 2, because that felt like the best coverage. And that merge we'll talk about a little later this evening, but it'll be a combination of what that group felt were the best features of regional centers with some support of some site-based options. So we're going to pause with preschool.
Could we ask questions on the preschool before you moved on to the next one?
Absolutely.
Board members, anybody have a question? Director Beck.
Just out of curiosity, do any of the parents who are here have any thoughts about the what's been presented? Sorry.
Yeah, so we pretty much summed everything up really well. One of the big other pros on scenario 2 was the capability for wraparound care at the 3 major nodes, and it would be easier to implement to get to that target of 700, because I know those were a couple of those goals that the school board and the district is really looking to get at. We all acknowledge that in an ideal situation, if money wasn't an issue and facility wasn't an issue, having your kids progress from preschool all the way through 5th grade would work. But injecting the the preschoolers into the facilities that we just moved 6th graders out of because we've acknowledged that they're already at capacity, and then now trying to also add the second topic, which is all the additional special education we're trying to add into those current elementaries, it just created too much of friction in my mind. And I can and if any of the other parents want to discuss that as well. But that was one of my biggest leanings towards scenario 2, is looking at current facilities, what's financially more responsible avenue, what keeps you having to go from 13 different sites to 3 main sites and then a little satellite site out in the western, and then the ability to just consolidate those care into those 3 major sites.
I would say, being a mom of 4, I think the wraparound was the biggest issue. So now, I mean, my youngest is 4 months now, but my oldest actually went to the children's village, but being in special education, he's provided with the opportunity for busing. But then when you have the other siblings, and it makes it's a barrier. So I think for me, scenario 2 with more access to wraparound care, which is why I lean more towards it. But I do feel like being on the outside as a parent, at some point there's going to be a conflict somewhere. You just have to figure out which one do you kind of want to deal with. So although it is going to be costly either way, I think if you look at the quality of care that you're going to be giving the children, so in my mind, scenario 2 would work for me.
Thank you. I was one of the people that was really leaning towards the option 4 with all the individual sites, just because of conversations we had had in the meetings about really wanting district retention and making those pathways clear so the students know if I go to this elementary, I go to this junior high, high school, etc. However, that was one of those things when you talk with staff and administration about all the other financial implications, staffing, that sort of thing, it did just become like, okay, well, that's probably not very practical. So the hybrid is probably the better option. And as other people mentioned, especially once you factor in the special education needs and some of the just the other factors that maybe as an individual, I was thinking more cost and transportation. That's some of the things I had heard in my circle. But then when you have those discussions with other parents, you realize that there are other needs outside of your situation. So I do agree that, having these conversations and realizing that your situation is not everyone's situation. So trying to take the best from each group has been helpful.
Director Ward?
In some of the options, we're talking about different facilities or with the larger facilities. One of them potentially requiring a purchase. Is there discussion about building a new facility, or are we just looking at acquiring and repurposing something different?
Yes, no, and maybe. So probably the best way to sum this up is when we talk about operational efficiency and reducing expense, our first thought is to look at facilities that we own, and is there a solution that would allow us to reduce the number of roofs and make use of some of that available capacity that we're seeing in that capacity chart. TJ, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
No, that's spot on. We try and keep a very clear separation of making a recommendation of what we do with our buildings or not from this committee. So the thing that we've tasked them with is a potential pathway. And then the second presentation we're going to hear tonight is our administration's response to that pathway and how we recommend the utilization of facilities. We the cascade of that information, we know that the board needs to hear that first in order to give us the direction to say, yes, let's move forward in that direction. And so that's the cascade of information for tonight. But their task is a pathway. And so I would say the conversation that we had was outstanding to get us to a spot where we thought we could find a pathway inside of our district in the direction that our committee thought was best for the community after hearing everyone's voice. That is a great question.
Follow up if that's okay.
Director Wood?
Yeah, the second follow-up is for Mrs. Dahlcup. Wondering, with either of these hybrid options, I mean, it expands the footprint a little bit. I mean, administratively, you think you're able to absorb that, or is that a different cascade of information to you? I don't know if that like factors into 7 different buildings plus a big center or 3 larger centers. I mean, I was able to tour Children's Village West a few weeks ago, and just the acuity of the kids and some of the things that they're needing. Just wondering how you feel that'd be able to be absorbed.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's kind of a theme throughout it is kind of spread thin with lots of different buildings. But really the focus of this group was to really look at access for families and expanding our ability to take 4-year-olds. So I think that will have to be looked at staffing wise once we pick a path and go that way, that I can't be at all these places at one time. So that's definitely a factor that we've talked about for sure.
She's being polite. No, she will not be able to do that. So we have to review that and look at that. So part of the review of the pathway that we're going to propose will be, how do we do it? And we have an idea, but we can't really move forward until we start talking with the human beings, and tonight's conversation is going to kick that off. So that's a great question, and that is probably one of the biggest ones that came up. Can we actually do it? And what does the staffing look like in a building? Say, for example, if we do school-based locations, what does that look like? One center locate, what does that look like? And so that's the exciting part. And also we inside of our district, the buildings that we have had different renditions of school-based programs, and we've never done a really stand-up job of saying this building belongs to this program belongs to this building, and that's one of the things we have to get right as we move our programs into this next phase. So that's an excellent question, and it's a huge part of the planning, and very good politically correct answer, Tiffany.
Director Hayes.
Current question, I guess, with our current status, why is it determined this school has AM, this school has PM, and only one has both? How did that come about?
So some of them I adopted when I got here, to be quite honest. So the Buffalo Hayes program has been that way for a long time. So the teacher is at Buffalo in the morning, Hayes in the afternoon. Truman, we moved back there after their 6th graders left, and we can always fill that AM and PM section in that North region because, again, like you saw the map, that's our only site above Locust Street. So that one fills pretty quickly. And then the Madison Jackson were our pilot programs. So we have some grant opportunities to keep those kiddos full day. So that came from our Madison and Jackson kindergartners had the lowest number that attended preschool. And so we were trying to target that population of student with some grant funding to keep those kids full day. So we're starting to be more data driven about where we're placing them and how long they are. But a couple programs have just been here a while, so I can't answer how that came about.
Director Barnes.
I've got a couple of questions. First, just for clarification, are preschool students included in the capacity analysis?
Yes.
By school?
Yeah. So CV West, CV Hoover have their own capacity analysis, and those numbers do figure into the elementary school.
To the elementary school. At some point, I'd love to know what that sort of change in capacity, if those go out, what that means to capacity levels in those schools. I think that's an important piece of the conversation. The second question, given access and equity has been part of the conversation, did you all talk about whether or not the access and equity question is geographic or positions that are available?
What do you mean by positions? Like,
by the number of spots available for students. Is there greater demand than there is supply for preschool in the district? Or is the access and equity question geographic, meaning close to home?
We have looked at this. I think it's definitely a combination. I think why we kind of go back and forth for all these options are I only keep families for 1 to 2 years. So once I feel like we figured out that set of kids, it's a whole new set of kids and a whole new set of things come the next year. So currently we are running on a waiting list. So we take all of our 4-year-olds first, and then we fill in with some Gen Ed 3-year-olds, and then we've talked before, but we have to take our special education students as soon as they turn 3. So we save some spots for those kids in the community to come in. So we do have about 60 to 83-year-olds on our waiting list. Some of them have been on there since August that we haven't been able to get in. So we pull off that waiting list once we have a kid drop. Definitely access as far as cost is a huge thing. So right now we're partnering with Head Start. Well, hopefully they're getting their funding back. That's another issue. But we have 92 students funded through Head Start. So that funding is a huge piece for them. We are also licensed through DHS so that we allow childcare assistance. So we're finding that funding piece and then having a spot to take them are kind of our 2 barriers that we're finding in our program currently.
And actually, that sparked something in my mind. If you look at scenario 2, based on your population density of attendance, your ability to change the enrollment of the 3 nodes versus 13 nodes every school year would be another pro of scenario 2, because then you're only looking at the 3 nodes versus multiple.
Carla.
So I haven't been to preschool in like a very long time, and so I'm just I'm I'm just trying to like kind of understand how this whole thing is going. I went to Trinity, which was a like preschool through 8th grade kind of situation, and that worked well in like a small capacity thing. But I realized that we're dealing with a lot of students. In the scenario 1, I'm just thinking here. So the small stars are like the elementary schools that some students will be going to, and then the big star is like the central like hub. And so would students be splitting their time between the elementary schools or like choosing between one of them?
like the big star is like the children's village that we're talking about, down there by the Putnam.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the children's villages, and then the small stars, like you said, those are each of the elementaries that has a preschool program in it.
The idea is that it's an option for
Mhm.
families. The center having more support for families. So if it's special education or some of that wraparound service, the center being more able to provide that. And then where it's the little stars, those kind of reach out geographically. So they just give more opportunity for proximity. So it's
Gotcha.
closer to somebody's house.
Yeah. And then I was wondering for those schools out in the western area, when it comes to like some of those students do need to be at that central building. I remember like y'all talking about like buses were only for like the special ed students. How would that work? Because it's a bit of a drive to go from like the western area to like that central building if the kids need it. And so how would that transportation look like if we did go through with that?
Yeah, so currently we only provide transportation, like you're saying, for our students with special needs, and if they qualify. So we look at in their meetings if they can access their education like any other preschooler, walking in, holding their mom's hand safely, that they wouldn't need that extra support. So some of those kids with higher needs, some physical needs, qualify for that transportation. So currently none of our general education students would receive that busing. So we do have students coming in from Buffalo Bluegrass area, and maybe their parent works in town, and so they're just dropping them off on their way in. But we don't have the 2-mile walk radius or anything like that like other buildings do. It's all parent transport.
I think that's where your question comes in with the geographics. and that's just another barrier that I was saying. There's gonna, no matter what, there's gonna be something that's gonna be a conflict. But the busing situation is gonna be a conflict because you might have people that are closer, you might have people that are farther, but that's the only opening that they have. So now you gotta figure out how to get your 3-4-year-old to and from where everybody doesn't necessarily have the village to have, hey, grandma, go pick up.
Yeah,
students. So that is a barrier.
Yeah, I was just thinking of like those students whose parents work in like the opposite direction, but they still need to go to that children's village because there's like openings there, or like they don't have the means of transportation. Like at some of the elementary schools in our district, like we have those abilities for them, but like what's the difference between our elementary school kids and preschool kids, because they still need their education.
And the other thing to keep in mind, and this was discussed in the meeting, when you're busing kids of that age, there's additional requirements, like they have to have seat belts and stuff. So it's not just a matter of throwing any bus at them. They've got to be specific buses.
Yeah, there's that. Thank you.
Director Potts.
Two quick ones. One, I assume that an individual with a preschooler can enroll their child at any one of our preschools, regardless. We don't have boundaries. Okay. Two, in the process that you went through, was there any surveying or sampling of parents who are using our preschools as to what their preferences might be?
So the FMPC having representation, as a cross section of the district provides that feedback to us as a committee. Tiffany has done some surveying from preschool that was done ahead of this process. So some of that information was screened as we started this. That's what helped us with our definition of problem and establishing our goals.
Anybody else? Yes.
Hi. So I'm currently in our CTE ECE program, which is early childhood education. And so I did have a question about the option 4. I do agree with you guys. There is not enough room in our Children's Village West. It is very crowded. As somebody who's worked for Stepping Stones and dealt with the kids and was a student intern, it is very crowded with, especially when you have a bunch of 3 to 5-year-olds, 20 in a classroom, even with the 2 paras and a teacher, it's still a lot. Like 3 to 5-year-olds are really a lot. But I did have a question. So if we hypothetically did option 4, how and where would we have that ECE program? Would we have one in each high school? Because all 4 high schools do come to Children's Village West as of right now. So would we have a teacher at each location, or would we split them up some way, somehow? But that was one question I had.
Yeah, and that's something that I've brought up in this process. I mean, I've told you guys, I started in the ECE program at West, so that's really a program near and dear to my heart. So I think that's a really important, not just for our preschool families, but also our high schoolers and their experiences, and to try out the field of early education. I think it's really important that we have some kind of hub, but sorry, I'm jumping in there.
Oh, no, that's all great. I was going to say stay tuned for some of our wrap up of this presentation, because we're going to talk a little bit about career preparedness, and that's actually one component that's part of that.
Nice. Okay.
And that program's really popular, and we run all 3 of the high schools. 4 of the high schools run the prereq classes, and then they all are shipped. I say shipped. They all go down to the villages. And so it's a really good program. And so those students coming out of there deciding if they want to, sometimes they're hired as paras pretty quickly after graduation. Some of them decide they're going to move on to be teachers. So that's a really good point. Even we probably should have had you on the committee, huh? Anyway, so and again, it shows that tie in that community and how we are. And we talk about pathways, like there's a career pathway aspect as this as well too. And so how can we maximize that as well will be the goal.
And then one more follow-up. So I know preschool in Iowa is not required. You're only required at the age of 5 or 6, I think, to do that. So if we had these locations in all of the elementaries, do you think they would be utilized? Like, because if it's not required by law, some parents don't I mean, some parents just don't send their kids, or they will send their kids to, I know private school preschools are a big thing. Because I mean, I even went to a private school preschool, and I know a few of us, I think all of us have actually.
I think that's why when you see the total number of 4-year-olds in Davenport, it's still a number that's greater than what we're shooting for, because we're going to recognize that there's other options, and some people will make use of those. There's the option to not partake in preschool, and so the number we're shooting for is what we feel to be a tangible grab at servicing our 4-year-olds.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Director Boston.
This may come up under your continuum of care presentation, but for the special ed students, do you feel that a more centralized location is going to be more effective for the special ed students?
Short answer, yes. I think that when we're dealing with those brand new 3-year-olds, that a specialty in early childhood is definitely beneficial for all the students. I mean, in an elementary, when you're working with 10-year-olds versus someone who was 2 yesterday and now they show up at school because it's their 3rd birthday, it takes a different skill set. So I think really having early childhood specialized support is definitely a benefit for those students.
And John, I don't know if you've probably haven't had a chance to it, and maybe this is way too early in the process, but have you been able to put any dollars and cents to this as far as, if we're adding 500 preschool students, what cost are we looking at?
We don't have cost yet. So as TJ mentioned, the cascade of information, we do have thoughts on a structure to start thinking about implementation. Once we get through that with the board and get some feedback, that'll actually be the next step, is to start ideating what those solutions look like and understanding the implications of cost, as well as facility preparedness to accept that programming.
Thank you. We can go on to the next part. Oh, sorry.
I just had one question. So I'm a Walcott kid. I went to a preschool at the local Walcott church because there was no preschool at Walcott School, and that was just the local one. So I was just wondering, what's kind of the entice of coming to a Davenport preschool? Just because I know for those kids who do live in Walcott, like I was able to just walk with my dad to that preschool, and that would be very out of the way to go all the way to the Buffalo one, or even the Bluegrass kids. Just, do they know of the benefits they can get from going to a Davenport preschool?
Yeah, I mean, I think that answer is kind of broad, or there's a lot of answers to that, but what you're talking about, I think, did you go to Calvary? So Calvary is a partner site, so they do have a licensed teacher and they're run through the district program. So I think it just depends on kind of like what Corey was saying, whether you're going to Miss Sally's down the street, who's just a daycare that calls himself a preschool, or you're going to one of those partner sites or a village site. So what you're getting at a village or a partner site is a certified teacher. So, and then also you have access to that free half day. So the state of Iowa, when your 4-year-old year, you get a free half day of preschool. So our programs run 2 hours and 45 minutes every day, no charge to families. So that's really the benefit. But our partner sites that partner with us also, they get that benefit as well.
Director Beck.
Just, can you explain what kind of teacher has to be there? Because, yeah, like I sent my youngest to a daycare center because I need that full day care. So a half day is not an option. But he got very high quality care and great preschool. So, but it wouldn't qualify necessarily for what we need. So can you tell me a little bit about what is the certification that's needed and why not everybody can do that?
Yeah, so our preschool teachers, as well as the partner sites, have their teaching license through the state of Iowa. So they have a bachelor's, they've completed their teaching or their student teaching, and they have a license. Yes, they have from the Department of Ed. And at the Children's Villages, they are required to have a dual endorsed license. So they're both the general education teacher and the special education teacher in the classroom. We do not require that of our partner sites, but at the village district sites, that's a qualification that they need that special education background as well.
So the people at the partner sites, is it a situation where the partner site might only have that certified teacher for the 2 hours and 45 minutes that they're doing preschool? Is that how that works?
And so the more sites you have, potentially, if you are requiring a certified teacher, that's that salary cost, that's that benefit cost, because they are part of an FTE configuration when you're looking at staffing. So that's an implication as well too that can have some dollars behind it. It has to be taken into consideration. Yeah.
I think one thing that's really important to notice here is we're not in the business of taking over a spot there. Tiffany does an outstanding job of where is the need, and that's where we're going to go, because those places are ingrained in the community as well. It's almost impossible to navigate that, but one of the things that's going to be really important for us, and there's ebbs and flows, but that one's been around for a very long time, right? So you notice you don't see a dot in the upper left-hand spot of the purple map. And so Tiffany understands that, because our goal is to get as many kids to that preschool level. And so one of the most important things as we move forward is how we navigate the wraparound care and partnering with our partner sites. And I think for the last handful of years, done a really nice job doing that. And that's a critical component of how we move forward. And as a matter of fact, the legislation that we see as Sarah and I are moving around doing our talks with our legislators, it's probably going to be more of how are you working with a wraparound care facility, and that's where the funding's going to be. And so that's an important part of how we move forward.
So just to clarify more, the option of putting a certified teacher into a situation that might already have children in daycare is one way of potentially expanding. Okay.
Okay, looks good. Continuum of care pathway.
Before you move forward, John, will you hit the 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner and get into present mode? Thank you, sir.
That is so much better. Look at that. Great questions. On the continuum of care, so first and foremost, why is this called continuum of care? We loosely started talking about needing to look at our special education programming, and we quickly realized that that is a very broad category. And so it ranges from very low level to very intensive and high touch. And so we felt that the terminology of continuum of care better captured everything that's involved in this. Like our preschool, we wanted to start by understanding the problem. So why do we need to look at this? So first of all, the environmental layout is important to the responsiveness and the success of how we see our students respond to that care. We wanted to minimize offsite programming, which a couple lines down, basically there's an identified or an understood need that the district needs to provide support before those offsite services are provided. So we can do more. You'll see in a couple of slides, the district enrollment is decreasing, but the ratio of students needing support is actually increasing.
So earlier when we were talking about the capacity at West is more because this is the example of that.
Exactly. And so we also know that as it relates very specifically to our behavioral and intellectual disabilities, there's a need to strengthen the service that we provide. Our solutions in the district have been reactionary. In you all understand this, it varies year over year. So as you get enrollment numbers and people get their IEPs and they qualify for services, that fluctuates. But often what happens is we're reacting to those real time and plugging them into available space. So when we looked at that capacity chart, we saw that we have many buildings that were under capacity, but those rooms are full. And that's because we have an available classroom. We'll just put a service in there. So we're able to respond to that, but that space, going back to the top line here, that space isn't necessarily set up to allow us to provide the best quality of care for what we're doing in there. So we'll get to what that means a little bit later in this, but we can do better. And understanding that we've been reactionary is part of the issue. So as I said, the number of students, and Courtney, please jump in if I get any of this wrong, but despite our declining enrollment, the number of students with IEPs is increasing. Year over year, it's going up considerably as a proportionate level of all of our enrolled students.
An example too, he's talking about like the level one, like probably an older terminology would be like resource students. Those are students that need very minimal. And then when you get to that level 2 and level 3, those are the kids that have those really significant needs, potential wheelchair students, nonverbal autistic kids, kids that are in severe behavior programs. So those levels 2s and 3s, those are the kids with the higher need. Be thinking about that. And then your level 1s are really, they're all gen ed students, but those level 1 students are, they may only require speech. They may have an IEP and they just require a speech path to come out and work with them a couple of days a week. So that just to kind of help you guys wrap your head around that and differentiate a little bit when we're talking about the needs.
So our buildings are equipped to serve mild disabilities. A good portion of our buildings can serve more moderate to severe disability needs. Regionally, we have some solutions for some very significant disabilities. However, we think that it'd be important to build a continuum of care that would better serve across the whole district what we need to cover our behavioral, mental health, autism, specialty programming. There's a number of ways that we understand that we could do better. So if you took enrollment numbers, and this is a long chart, right? This is covering, the past 30 years. Our starting number and our ending number of total enrolled students is going up. The three bottom lines are our level 1, level 2, and level 3. Top bar is combined. If we simplified that and just looked at about the last 12 years, our top line is total enrollment in the district. We've gone from about 15,900 down to just a shade over 12,000. However, our special education numbers are going from just below 2,000 to just above. So it's representing about 15% of our enrollment now versus about a dozen years ago, it was about 12%. And I will say, just in line with national averages, we as a district are on par with what's being experienced across the nation. So when we talk about this, we're talking about two different general categories. There's low incidence and high incidence. So low incidence are more significant concerns and or more significant disabilities. These are more rare. They do impact less of our school age students. So about 1% of our school age children are in the low incidence. So low incidence, high touch. So there's fewer of them, but they need more care. And then our high incidence is around 10% of our school age children. That's our more prevalent, and that can range from mild to moderate. It's more students, lighter touch. So they require less. I'll have Corey and Courtney feel free to jump in. The chart kind of explains a little bit about what this means when we talk about low incidence, high incidence.
And you can just look across there, like he talked about the prevalence and then different examples, so that high incidence that describes quite a few of our kids, and they've got the speech language like we talked about, the ADHD, have some different impairments. The settings they're genuinely served in the gen ed setting and have a push in with a teacher. They might have a para support. They might get pulled out a little bit to work on their goal areas. Again, talk about kind of a resource room, interventions. It's just all really, it depends on their goal, their IEP goal. So we do academic interventions, whether it's for reading or for math, and then we do some behavioral or social emotional, as far as like accepting redirection, working with their peers. Those are kinds of things, and those are pretty common ones that we work on. And then the educator needs, again, they just work collaboratively. Like I have several SCI, call it SCI, it's special, self-contained with integration at West, and they travel from room to room with their students. And then we have 2 areas of program, paras, that we call, so that's that student support, and that's that low incidence where it's fewer kids, but a little bit higher of a need. And if you go across, you'll see the examples of some of our low incidence kids. Those are the ones that have some sensory issues. We have a sensory room at West. It's one entire classroom taken up just for kids that need some sensory. So with feels, the temperature of the room, different things that they play with, different things that they experience. And these are our nonverbal autistic kids, as an example. The instruction for them, it's really individualized. It's really intensive, focused on their functional skills and then their community participation. So a lot of our students leave the building and they go on different outings. They go on different jobs. They have job coaches, again, depending on the level. This personnel or these staff is a little bit more specialized. They have a different set of training than maybe my SCI paras, because they are working specifically with maybe just one student. Some of our students require toileting and that kind of a thing, so that takes a different skill set, and so a little bit more highly qualified. So, Courtney, anything else I left out? I'm sure a lot.
So, regardless of the disability, an inclusive approach covers the needs of all students to create a supportive and functional environment. So we understand the physical space plays a part in this. Also, just thinking about how we're arranged as a district so that we can respond to this, not just at a building level, but throughout our region, so that we provide a good quality of opportunity for students across our entire district. So when we look at this, we're looking at school-wide considerations. So what happens in our buildings? Signage, quiet zones, noise can be something that stimulates. Noise can also be something that agitates or aggravates. So understanding that some students react to stimuli of noise and light different than other students. ADA compliance, while our buildings, a good chunk of them have the ability to move around the buildings, not all of our facilities are fully in compliance with ADA, and in some of our low incidence scenarios, those disabilities actually require something that exceeds what ADA would provide. So special accommodations become more challenging.
We've had to look at, sorry, John, we've had to look at how we configure some of our rooms. West is 2 stories. Central is 6. So you probably don't see a lot of their ID students maybe up on that 6th floor, just because of just getting around. Like he's talking about the physical layout of the building. And so do they have access to restrooms? Do they have access to an exit door if they need it? Again, we have a sensory room that's built within. We kind of have a wing of West that is dedicated to this. And so it's just constant adaptation. That's what we're really good at. That's what we're professionals, and we do a really nice job with the district support. If we have students that come in that have various needs, then we adjust to those needs. So we have a set wing, and it isn't going to be just a West High scene. That's going to be all the schools that we have to adapt depending on the level and the need of the student.
Sensory rooms. So Chloe talked about this a little bit. Just the ability to regulate the therapeutic response for students. Adaptive playgrounds, so making sure that our playgrounds are also accessible and able to respond. And then not all of our buildings provide the opportunity for the right kind of personal care. Go ahead.
Yeah, so just to kind of back you up on this is more of what he was saying about being less reactive and more proactive. So we don't want to just throw the kids with special needs into whatever room is available or um, whatever space is available. We want to make sure that they are included, but also knowing what their limits are, knowing the care, the different level of care that they need while still simultaneously just including them. So that is the, not to speak for you, sorry, but that is the part where he's talking about being proactive instead of reactive. So I think the space or some spaces in some buildings, I haven't been in every single building, is kind of where we looked at with the signs and the zones and just being mindful of where we're placing the kids, because all the kids do have different needs. So I think that's where we kind of discussed how do we be more proactive. And I think that, I don't know what you have on the next slide, but we were talking about this continuum of education for paras and teachers. That's a way for us to be more proactive, just learning responsive. Because I do feel like, just like healthcare, education is constantly changing. And I think now for me, I see a more kids that are on the spectrum, more kids with autism. So I think just learning the different branches of what that means and what the disabilities are could be a way of for us to be more proactive. So
I don't know why you need me up here talking. As we pull ourselves down to the classroom level, again, some of these same considerations, distractions, light and noise can be something that stimulates and fosters a good learning environment, but it can also be distracting and cause some sensitivity. So being mindful that classroom needs to be responsive appropriately. The type of furniture in the classroom also can be impactful to how we address that care. Organization of our rooms, as well as the spaces within the building, can help this. Keep in mind that the type of environment doesn't always become conducive to what a teacher needs for instructing. So some type of learners need tools that aren't the same as our general education classrooms. And our classrooms don't necessarily easily adapt to provide the right kind of environment for both teaching and learning. Again, that can come back to the technologies that are in there, the tools, even just the placement of how those are arranged in the room and how the teacher moves around, or simple things like the heights of the desks and tables and boards. Those are all things that can be done well to promote a better learning environment. So as we jump forward, we started to talk about what would be considerations that we need to think about as we work towards a solution. So those goals included making sure that we provide a consistent option for programming and access for supports district-wide. We need to make sure that we're including preschool as part of that conversation. As we learned about in our preschool segment, those families need access as well. We have a regional feeder system. So we have that east, northwest, and western region where we have the elementary schools feeding towards our middle schools, feeding towards our high schools. So we want to make sure that continuum of care embraces that pathway, which means that programming needs to be distributed throughout our regions, not just a single district solution. So we don't want to send our students needing supports to just the same spot in the district that everybody has to go to. We want it to be regional based. We know that we need a solution for our significant care for things such as autism. We also have this goal of not wanting to send students out of the district or off-site if possible. Our team met across these 4 meetings. So as they considered these things, we found that this is a topic that not everybody's well versed in. So this, as we move into starting to explore solutions, I just wanted to mention that we also employed some assistance from a focus group. And so the focus group was staff and families that are directly affected by this conversation. They participate in care programming, and so that was very beneficial. We learned a lot about some of our existing conditions by meeting with that group. So as we established our goals, we did talk about we want this regional-based solution. We know that our high schools already have supports. They're prepared for mild to significant levels of care need. At our middle schools, we're building 2 new middle schools in the district. We have solutions for behavioral and intellectual disability built into those new plans. We have 2 other middle schools that, while they provide service, they don't have the same kind of physical space that we're planning into the new. So likely we need to study that and figure out if there's a better solution needed for our 2 remaining middle schools. And then for our elementary schools, we provide service at our elementary schools, but what we think is going to be important is in each region to identify a location where we can better respond to our need for moderate to significant behavioral disability and moderate to significant intellectual disability. So having a regional solution in each region for this.
And as the mental health needs of our students continues to grow too, like how that, again, that adaptation and how we continually change and how we are able to support those students as well too, because we are seeing a higher need of students that are struggling in that area.
And then autism. So for our significant care, providing a solution at the elementary, middle, and high school level. We don't know if that's one single facility or if it's distributed to an elementary, a middle, and a high school, but knowing that we need that solution. And then significant district-wide solution for our significant mental health and behavioral needs. And when we talk about that significant need, that's very specifically, we need to do more investigation with our Thrive and Rise programming. So Thrive is our behavioral, or excuse me.
Yeah, the Thrive is the Thrive. So at the Davenport Learning Center, the Thrive serves our special education students with significant behavior needs, and then the Rise program, that's kind of a separate program where that's our high school, and it's an at-risk program where students that potentially get into some trouble and come down to the district for a potential discipline meeting, they may be placed there temporarily, and so they're continued to be served. And so the Rise program is a temporary placement for those students, and so we've really got that up and running this year. And I will speak as a high school principal; it's been very successful, along with the Rise or the Thrive program as well that serves our special education students. And again, both of these programs are good. We can always get better, and a lot of it is just having the appropriate staff that can, because the needs of the students are outpacing our staffing needs. At times it feels that way, and so having those very specific programs and the highly qualified staff that's there to run it, and they need to be a little bit isolated, but again, they're not meant to be a permanent solution. So especially that Rise students are placed there, it's temporary, they continue with, and then they will transition back to their home buildings once they have served their time there. But I think it's going to make a significant impact on some of the egregious behaviors that we have seen. And then again, it's located at that Davenport Learning Center, and so I know there's been lots of conversations about just that building and the makeup of that building alone, but they're 2 well-run programs.
So John, I'm going to request that Courtney kind of take over this slide.
All right. So overall, what we're recommending is we know that right now, as they were just talking about our Thrive and Rise program, that's really serving more of that low incident population, right? Like we know that there's a need for offsite programming so that we can have very intentional, targeted support for our students with very significant social emotional needs. But what we're missing is kind of that continuum back into the building. So what we see is we want to have options for services at all buildings, knowing that when we get more to those low incident disabilities, we'd like to see more of a regional approach that can feed into going into more offsite if needed or back into the building as they progress. So what you see up here is still having some type of offsite programming, wanting to honor that, although right now the needs around significant autism we're seeing at our elementary and a little into our middle, that's going to keep growing throughout our system. So making sure we're well prepared for that to serve those students. And then making sure that regionally we have some type of programming to serve more moderate disability needs for students with social, emotional, behavioral needs, as well as intellectual disabilities. We just want to create more predictability within our system for our families, for our students, for our staff. And we just want to make sure that we have a continuum where kids can flow as they need for their needs to be met through our services.
Questions? That's a lot of information.
Director Barnes.
Got a couple of quick questions. Is there a different square footage construction cost for this type of construction? And is there also a different square footage designation for students who might be on the continuum of care? I'm trying to wrap my head around the capacity question.
So, yes and no. It depends on the level of programming, and the reason it's a little bit different is some of the space that we need for our continuum of care is actually not a full-size classroom. So it's smaller spaces where you can do more one-on-one or one-on-two, one-on-three. So we're talking not filling a full-size classroom. When we talk about some of our more significant behavioral or intellectual disabilities, that can be a need that takes more space. And where we're dealing with some of our low incidents where we're having to implement some life skills pieces, then that level of cost does climb because now we're providing something more plumbing, laundry, shower, maybe a Hoyer lift to help maneuver. And so that's why the solution is also on a continuum.
Okay. I hope this isn't an unfair question. We have enough space, but we don't have the right types of spaces. Is that a fair assessment of the situation? Okay. Yep. I think the other thing that I'm taking away from this is I've heard the adaptation, adaptable, change, respond multiple times, right? But we also can't, you don't build a church for Christmas and Easter. And hearing all are there adaptive space options to accommodate? Because if we look at the enrollment trend, we're actually pretty flat in the number. It's just the proportion is much higher.
So that's where a regional approach helps with that. So if we get a regional approach to our continuum servicing, we don't have to provide that adaptability everywhere. We can target that and help better manage the kind of the fiscal responsibility of the district while doing that, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Director Beck.
I appreciate the intentionality of finding these kinds of things because I know one thing I definitely don't want to see is people having to start here, then go there, and then go somewhere else. I think the important thing is to think adaptability and flexibility. And I see how that regional approach can come into play. if we're doing it with intention, that I think will work. And so I hope that we can continue having the proactive discussions rather than reactive.
Anybody else? I have one. If I were temporarily sent to the RISE program, and I realized, and you're saying, oh, you're ready to go back, and I'm saying, I don't want to go back because I am successful here, and if I go back, I will not be. Is that an option?
That is not an option, but there are options back on home campus. Like we have other programming available on the high schools with at-risk programming that our high schools work really intentionally on. How do we transition that student back to their home building? So meetings are held, plans are made. They're very intentional about what that looks like.
Yeah, we have students and parents that are like, this is my student's successful here. They can't, it's the size or whatever. And so we never just say, you're done with RISE. You just have to show up to West. Here's your schedule and good luck. Like Courtney said, we are very intentional and we ease them back into it. And so the high schools have programming, our redirection programs that help with that as well. And so we continually adapt through with Courtney's leadership on what that looks like for our students. And we've really grown with that a lot. And it's been very successful.
So that program will always fluctuate, correct?
What do you mean by fluctuate?
Well, you might be in and then you're going to go back to the school. I mean, where we house it now, it's not going to necessarily say the same. Start with 20.
Correct. It's a short-term placement
Right.
for a safety reason. And so, yeah, they're there for a certain amount of time, still accessing education with a transition plan back to their home building.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. That was great.
Okay.
And I attended the very first meeting to thank the parents for giving their time. And at the end here now, I also want to thank you for putting in your time, commitment to this. There were long nights, I'm sure. But we, as a board, did not have a plan, did not have anything in this. So we really did rely on your discussions and coming up with some options for us to look at. So thank you very much for putting in your time.
This group is not done. They're going to have some work in the spring. So I think they did a great job coming to you with some concision as to the things we talked about. I think as we look forward to the spring, it's going to get exciting.
Thank you, John. One of the tasks that the board gave us was to take a look at programming, and the programming being preschool, our continuum of care, and then the specific ask was CTE programming. But one of the things that we are starting to see converge is this notion of what does future ready mean for the students of Davenport? The Portrait of a Graduate really infused that into our system. So I think there's an opportunity to have a bigger conversation about what is it that our parents and families want from us, and what opportunities do they want from us, and incorporate that into the conversation. So in terms of expanding past our CTE offerings, notion what is it that our families want for our kids to be future ready? Because I think we can encompass more in that conversation than just that specific program. And I think now's the time. We're perfectly poised for it. We have a Portrait of a Graduate work that our community says needs to be infused in every work that we do. And we could really garner some excitement about what is it, what's the Portrait of a Graduate, and then what do our classes, coursework, instructional modalities look like as we move forward. So something as the board to consider as we move into that spring, because I think there's a real opportunity to really capture a lot more information and still accomplish what the board has tasked us with doing. So
it's really exciting. I mean, all the stuff that we're doing right now, that portrait, it all ties in together. And like TJ saying, it's not just the CTE, it's the kids that are college bound, it's the kids that are going straight to work, it's whatever. And then we've worked a lot, and Diane, through Diane's leadership, leading this Portrait of a Graduate work, that's been really, really impactful, and be able to see when community members come in and say, we need your graduates to be able to. And so we start that from senior year and we work all the way back through kindergarten, and we've got domains and all these different areas that we're working on. So we are all in consensus. So the students know from kindergarten all the way up through when they graduate preschool. Sorry, Tiffany, we just Aaron talked about preschool this whole time, my bad. Preschool all the way up through when they graduate, that the expectations are age appropriate and grade appropriate for them, but they're very similar. So it's really exciting right now. We're doing some really, really good work, and you guys should be very proud, and I couldn't be more proud to just be on some of these committees and learn some of this, and having our community people and our parents here has just been outstanding. And I'm not sure which one of you guys talked about, like, as an outsider. You're absolutely not an outsider. You're running this show. It's been really fun to work with that group. Like we said, there's a commitment there, and they are committed, and so that's an exciting piece of it too, because we've got a really strong community backing that wants the best for our kids, like we do.
Good. Okay, thank you very much again. Sure. We're going to take a 5-minute break. Okay, we are back. Next up on the agenda is board reports. Anyone have a board report?
Director Boston.
Since our last meeting, I was able to attend the West High Athletic Boosters event. And I just want to thank all our booster organizations throughout the district for the support of our students.
Director Barnes.
Director Beck and I both attended the Davenport Central Booster event, and I want to publicly thank Mayor-elect Gordon, who attended and spoke to the people who were there and expressed his excitement to partner with the school district. I'd also like to mention that since our last meeting, I did have another meeting with the foundation, and the foundation will be sponsoring a trivia night on Friday, January 30th. And one of their ambitions is to have a table from each one of the schools in the school district participate in this fundraiser.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? I attended the Festival of Trees Parade. It was nice to see all three of our high schools marching in the band. So, anything else? Okay. Next up is the consent agenda. Oh, sorry. Open forum. I'm looking at two different papers. Open forum is a time for members of the community to give input at a board meeting regarding school district issues or concerns. Individuals who want to speak, please fill out the open forum request and give it to the board secretary prior to open forum. The form is available in hard copy for in-person attendees or on the school board page of the district's webpage for those who want to participate virtually. Virtual participants must email their request to Brenda T. at tbren@davenportschools.org by 3:00 p.m. on the day of the board meeting. The board will not act on any issue presented during open forum if it was not published as an agenda item. Iowa open meeting law prohibits action on any issue that is not on the agenda. The president may set the amount of time allowed for individuals to speak, which I am setting at 2 minutes. The board asks that no charges or complaints be made against individual employees of the district or community. Remarks that reflect negatively on the character or motives of any person will be called out of order. You will be asked to state your name and home address prior to making remarks. Please note that board meetings are recorded and the recordings are available online. Brenda, do we have any virtual? Okay. The first one up is Rihanna Smith Trujillo. Yeah, you can go right to the table, and there's a microphone there. And you just need to push the button until it turns green, and then you can speak. State your name and address first.
Hello, my name is Rihanna Smith Trujillo, and my address is 723 31st Street, Bettendorf, Iowa. Dear members of the Davenport Community School District Board, I want to begin by saying how profoundly grateful I am for the privilege of serving in this district. Davenport has given me more than a job, it gave me purpose. I've been blessed beyond measure to meet so many remarkable young people and children who changed me in ways that I will carry for the rest of my life. As a teacher, my most sacred responsibility has always been to keep my students safe emotionally, physically, and academically. That duty has guided every choice I have made. But due to my complex medical history and my declining health, I feel that I am no longer able to meet the standard of safety and consistency that our students deserve. That reality has weighed on me more heavily than any diagnosis I've ever received. The district deserves teachers who can show up fully every single day with the stamina and presence that our children need. And although it breaks my heart, although it feels like another piece of myself has been taken by this illness, another dream rewritten by circumstances out of my control, I'm here tonight to ask that you please accept my resignation. I do not make this decision lightly. I make it with grief, with love, and the respect to this community. I pray that Davenport continues to grow in excellence and that every child who walks through these doors finds safety, compassion, and hope. I also pray that the board can see the depths of the heartache and meet me with the same mercy and grace that I have always tried to give my students. Thank you. They deserve it, and so do the educators that serve them. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak with you tonight and allowing me a small part of the child's lives in this district. It has been one of the greatest blessings of my life.
Thank you very much. Next up is the consent agenda. May I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Madam President,
Director Hayes,
I move the board accept the consent agenda as written.
could I have a second? It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next up is committee reports, breaking barriers,
None at this time.
legislative advocacy.
We have meetings set up with our legislators for December 9th and December 10th.
Local school advisory committee,
We don't meet until the new year.
long range facility planning. I think I heard a lot.
We met last week and went over what we just kind of went over here with our long-range planning and with our continuum of care and our preschool.
Policy will meet in January or February again. Recognition, more focused towards the end of this semester. And finance.
Kevin will be reporting on our key measures report and our monthly fund report.
Thank you. And apologies to the Finance Committee since ISB convention overlapped with our general meeting time. This is out of sequence a little bit, but it's not as important for this report, but it will be going forward. Starting with the monthly fund report. Remember, this is for the end of September. It's what I would call a short quarter. So there's not a lot to report here. But of the two reports, this is the most important one at this point in time. This may be one of the last times I mention this, but when you look at the highlight of our federal revenue, the reason that that's different is because the very last of our ESSER funds were received in FY25 at this point in time. So there's a little over $1 million of ESSER funds in FY25 that are obviously not in FY26. So we've talked about this for several years now about the changes in that. That's why I highlighted that. The other point I want to make is that since we're on this page in the management fund, when you see a $1.8 million reduction. That's because if you remember, management fund is property tax supported. As of September, we have not received our property taxes, so we've had to start paying our insurance premiums for 3 months. That's the primary driver in why we run a deficit. It's also explains why we need to have a balance in that account to be able to navigate the short months as far as revenue is concerned. When we flip to October and we have our first major property tax payment, you're going to see that flip tremendously the other way. On page 2, you'll just see the continuation of on our other funds.
You'll see that that's our capital project funds, that's starting, obviously continuing to go down as we start to do our next bond sale. You'll see that go up again. Eventually that will go to zero. So you're going to constantly see that start to come down and come down and come down. The other on our debt service, I wanted to mention, you see our annual beginning fund balance of 6.6 million. It's important to note that we have to put the money in our debt service for that year's debt service payment for the bonds that we have already sold. So we're constantly putting the dollars in a year in advance into that debt service. You'll always see that amount there. We'll be making our 2 principal payments during the year. That hasn't started yet, but at least you can see that, hey, we have a balance in there to start the year, but that is for this year's payments. And so right now, when we move money into the debt service fund, that is for next year's payments. So we have everything there. So everything's just 1 year ahead. I'm going to pause there and ask if there's any questions. Okay. On the key measures report, the one thing I want you to know, this was, I'm still in flux of working on our 5-year projection. If you remember, we do a 5-year projection. We're at that point where I'm scrubbing a lot of the data and making sure everything's accurate. So I want to say with this report, with very much caution, that there's some changes that are going to be shifting. I've got some checking to do to make sure our AEA flow through that's changed is accounted for properly. I have some concerns about that to make sure it's accurate in the projection. And so I'm making some FY26 adjustments budget-wise that impact what this report's going to tell you. So just keep that in mind. It'll be corrected come October. So we'll be having that 5-year projection completed. You'll notice though that on the general fund unspent balance, that 98.7%, we're getting a lot closer to 100%. But keep in mind, there's going to be some shifts in there, but we're getting closer to that 100%, and that's been the goal all along. And you'll also notice in our solvency, those last 2 at the bottom, those 2 in yellow, you're seeing it's getting 19, 18% as far as projection and so forth. Obviously that is going to change as I make adjustments, but we're getting below the 20%. That's okay. Everything's fine, but you're seeing coming true what I've been saying. It's like when we get to that year, this is going to start happening. And on page 2 of this, very quickly, this is where do we do a budget amendment? You see a lot of red numbers in that variance. Well, that changes because I need to make some adjustments in there. So that is nothing to worry about at this point, and it's so early in the year. So I went over that very quickly because that's going to change, but are there any questions?
Director Poston.
Kevin, on the AEA flow through with such a drop, is that all related to the changes that were made with the AEA? And how does that affect our budget? Does that money go somewhere else, or that's just taken away from the budget?
What it did, it changed in revenue, we call it source. And in expenditures, we call it project. They've changed my source and project because instead of being flow through and taking out of our property, our state aid, it's coming. So our state aid has jumped a whole lot. And I'm like, I need to make sure that is that the AEA flow through? I need to see where it falls within the budget, both on the revenue side and on the expense side. And I'm not sure I'm seeing that in my projection. So I need a little time to flush that out. But yes, it's a movement of where it's at. You used to see the AEA flow through in the other expenditures, and I don't think that's where it's going to show up now. So we're going to have a shift, and you're going to start to see that when we get all along from FY24 to 25 to 26, and you're going to see that change. So I'm curious of how that's going to play out.
So because of that change, does that mean we'll have more available funds in our general fund?
No, not necessarily. We'll have more flexibility on how we spend our 10%. So no.
Anybody else? Director Beck?
Just to clarify, the So the amount of money going that we are able to spend with the AEA has not changed. It's the way it gets there. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay. So as a portion of the total budget, that has not changed. It's which column?
Yes.
Okay.
100% correct.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you. Items requiring action, and I will say this, Area Education Agency Board membership vote. I will not be voting since I am on this ballot. So, but could I have a motion?
Madam President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board's weighted vote for Toby Payon in Director District Number 3, Karen Klein Jerome in Director District Number 4, and Maria Ricote Ramza in Director District Number 5 for the Mississippi Bend Area Education Agency Board of Directors.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next up is discussion items on the Facility Master Planning Committee. Superintendent.
Thank you. I would ask that Courtney, John, and Tiffany come back up to the table. As I stated before, it's the role of our Facility Master Planning Committee to talk about pathways and potential solutions. It's the administration's responsibility to build a potential solution to that. What does that look like under our current reality? And so one of the things that we did right alongside those recommendations is we would have our community meetings, and then we would go into our facility master planning work meetings and talk about what does that look like. And we felt incumbent that it was really important to us to really try and work out potential pathways that met the charge of the board right alongside, just in case we wanted to enact on something for the following year or whatever. And so the recommendation that we have today is coming to you in a cadence that allows us to begin to have the conversation. So this is really the first conversation that our community has as a potential solution. And we purposefully do that because we want the board to hear it first, and then we move into our work time as what does it look like? Can we do it with the human beings that we have? Can we do it with the facilities that we have and the declining enrollment and maximizing what we have? Do we have the finances to be able to accomplish this? And so this is our initial recommendation as administration to the school board based off of the pathway information that you heard. So John, I turn it over to you, and feel free to chime in at any time.
Yep.
Tonight, what we're looking at is our preschool and continuum of care pathways recommendation.
So this is less of a presentation and more of a discussion amongst all of us. And unlike the last one, there's not a whole lot of slides here. So literally, there's like 3 sections: preschool pathway, continuum of care pathway, and then some next steps pieces. So on our preschool, this came to us with this recommendation of, is there a hybrid that would merge the options or scenarios 1 and 2 from the FMPC? So we kind of learned that it's challenging to implement any one of these models on their own, but we kind of felt like we were already understanding that a hybrid was probably going to be a tangible solution for the district. The proposed option we think is going to increase the center-based opportunity within each region. So we're looking at trying to grab that 3 centers, 1 north, 1 east, 1 west. So that helps us better distribute the center and what a center could offer, and then link in the option of providing some additional access by using some of our elementary buildings. So what we thought is that by doing this, it gives us greater access to our families. It aids in administrative support. So back to a question Director Barnes asked about, when we support this out regionally and using our facilities, yes, we do have some capacity at our sites. If we use those sites that we already own, we have an administrator, we have a nurse, SAM, custodial staff, you name it. There is a level of administrative function already there. And so that then would say that Tiffany gets greater support from staff across the district so that she can function more as that administrator for the program. The other thing is what we've looked at is how do we solve this and try to actually hit the number. So 700, we think we can do it. So the proposed option kind of goes by region. So on the East region, we are thinking that the district would move away from CV Hoover, and that program would actually get relocated to this building, first floor. By doing so, it more centrally locates that program, and it actually locates it in a spot that's a little more easy for access for a lot of families, but it also allows us to grow that program. So CV Hoover is something like 120 to 150 students right now, and we can exceed 200 by moving here. We also think to better increase the access to programming, doing something on the east side, we identified potentially Eisenhower Elementary. By adding 3 to 4 rooms there, it gives a little extra coverage in the east side, closer to where there's a lot of families that would use it. So having that distribution of a center, more centrally located in our east region, and then a school base kind of covering that heavy residential portion of the eastern region, we think gives really good coverage for just preschool on the east side. Madison currently has a PM program with wraparound care. Because of its proximity to this facility, that would just fold in as the offering here. That was located there as a trial. So it was a trial to get preschool with wraparound care. It's been very successful. It is completely full. And so that sort of solidifies that there is a need for that in our east central region. North has the least amount of offering of any region. So we have a limited amount of offering currently at Truman. The bigger picture would say, what if we create a more sizable addition at Harrison? There's space to do it. That would allow us to create a children's village north. That's a good central accessible location in our north region. If we shot for maybe 3 to 6 rooms, we could see ourselves reaching a total capacity of 120 of our preschoolers or more. That would then say that the Truman program would eventually just fold in with what's at Harrison. In our west region, we think Children's Village West remains. Jackson currently has that AM program with wraparound care. That would remain. And what we have for programming at Hayes would remain. And then at Buffalo, the elementary school hosts preschool there, so we would keep that there. But we're thinking that this is a phased approach. So there's some reason to think that you would do some work, pause, see how your enrollment numbers work, see how the preschool program is responding, how families are making use of this, then move into your next step. And then eventually go into a full additional phase where we get down the road a little bit and understand those numbers and the way our buildings are responding to enrollment numbers and capacity. So first step, we would go ahead and make that move to get the Hoover program located to JB Young. That would then say that the Madison program moves over here to JB Young. On the west side, CV West, Buffalo, Jackson, Hayes, that all kind of remains as is. And on the north side, Truman would remain as is for now. Our pause then would allow us to start making preparations for the next step, which would say start making those preparations to grow a program for a center at Harrison and Eisenhower. Once that center is created at Harrison, the Truman Preschool could move over to that location. And that would effectively have us with now a 3-center district. So we'd have north, JB Young, and west. We'd have, so Harrison, JB Young, and west. And then at Eisenhower, essentially we're creating one additional school-based location. Then we pause, see where our numbers at. Start to understand, do we need to increase or reduce the number of options out there at our school-based locations? So is that providing more access, less access? Make sure that we're understanding our enrollment numbers, the impact of those things that take students to other districts or other schools in our area. The other thing is we're talking about other changes related to our continuum of care. So this also gives us a time to understand how we're using our facilities for some of these other programmatic responses. And so then we can be more comprehensive with this picture. I'm going to pause. TJ, Tiffany, feel free to jump in here.
No, I think that's an excellent summation of coming out of our pathway. As you can see, it's a merging of a center-based, a school-based, and the idea of expansion. I think one of the reasons when we look at the age of our buildings, Eisenhower and Harrison are in that 60s range where we're probably going to get anywhere from 20 to 40 more years out of those buildings. So to say that we could expand there. Also, we want the freedom to look at a potential addition to those places. For example, Eisenhower needs a gym, a cafetorium, one of those two. And so the ability to solve multiple solutions there would be beneficial while to channel the board while you have the shovels there, get the most out of it. And the notion that pathway meets both the east side and the north side. The big question is, okay, what do the resources look like? And then the traffic flow of our human beings. But those buildings, those spaces can be anything. We could add 5th grade classrooms and renovate our current kindergartens to be the preschool. So we want the freedom to evaluate what does that look like for us. And I think it poises us for horizon conversations as those buildings are. As our buildings are tiered, we have buildings that are 100 years old, we have buildings that are 60 years old, and so these buildings still have a fair amount of life left in those buildings for consideration.
I think the other piece of this is making sure there's an appropriate runway for the district, right? Money isn't an unlimited resource, and the numbers are changing still. So having enough runway gives us time to understand that we're making the moves right, so that you're investing the money one time, not coming back over and over and redoing this.
Are there questions?
I have a question just about while those shovels are there, kind of as TJ said, and being an interest of money there with the North region, adding approximately 120 capacity to that. I mean, should we be looking at a larger addition? Does the demand of the North region match the demand of the East or West region, where there's quite a bit more space in those children's villages?
I mean, the short answer is we don't know because we haven't had the access up in that region. So, like I said before, Truman is the only program we have on the north side at all, and it's northwest. So I'm confident that we have the kids up there that are, and I think that's kind of where we have to figure out too. Like you said, I like the phased approach because I think I have a lot of those kids coming from the north driving down to Children's Village West. So then they'll all reshuffle to the locations that are closer to them. So then it's just filling those the spots that they leave open. So I have confidence that we will get the kids in all the regions, and whether that's with eligible 4-year-olds or, like I said, I have 83-year-olds on the waiting list right now that we could put in classrooms. So to get those kids enrolled as soon as they register, we open registration in February, and some of our kids don't know till August that they do or don't have a spot, depending on the location that they're looking for. So.
But I think that's a great consideration for us to put down in our documentation. Is that enough? So that's a great question. And as we begin to plan and move forward, I think we need to ask that question. If there's a way that we can find that out. We do have partner sites in some of those areas. So the ability to do a little bit of demography. I think Tiffany's a part-time demographer as well.
I think the options, I really like the options of having kind of these centers located in the elementary buildings, because that will give us a lot more flexibility with those classrooms. So right now at, Buffalo and Hayes, we just have that half-day program, and then they leave the space. They're just there for a half day, where if we get more interest, we could use that space for a morning and afternoon. Now we're getting 40 kids using that same classroom, or if they need that wraparound care, I feel like we can be more responsive in each area rather than more at the centers like we're doing now. We can be more responsive to the need around the city, around the district.
Director Beck?
So like Eisenhower makes a lot of sense to me because it's already a 1-story building, and there's a huge green space there, as opposed to, say, McKinley, which really is kind of crowded already. Why not Fillmore instead of Harrison? Because Fillmore is a newer building, and
yes,
that's an excellent question.
Go ahead.
So we moved our deaf and hard of hearing program there, and this is to Fillmore, and this is part of the snap, to use one of Sarah's terms, the snip snap that we have to stop. So the commitment to specialized staff, specialized learning, signage, all of the update to the playground that's going to be going there. We've made a commitment to Fillmore that we're going to be the deaf and hard of hearing program, and they have some other programming there that makes them full. And so with all of our buildings up there, there's some site logistics too. So we've got to really work through quite a few issues. Fillmore is kind of wonky the way it sits on its property. Harrison's the same way. So, but that's the main consideration for that. So paired right alongside of the preschool conversation is our continuum of care. And so that staff has gone all in. The principal's gone on all in on the learning that's necessary. And we had a family member from Fillmore in our focus group talking about what those environments could potentially look like and the playground could look like. And so it was actually a really fun conversation, and I developed anyway.
Well, and I think, to go to your point, I think that's what this committee is doing a really good job of being proactive and not having those families, whatever program you're in, move around, so that Courtney and I aren't fighting over a space next summer for a preschool or a special education program. So I think just planning it out will be a lot more proactive, and we can let our families know where these programs are going to be.
Director Barnes?
Truman to Harrison, Madison to JB Young, Hoover to JB Young. Those are the sort of relocations. And Eisenhower represents an expansion. Is that a fair way to look at this?
Absolutely.
What would be the trigger? Because the phase one is east, central, whatever you want to call it. What's the trigger to move to our most underserved, which is the north region? I mean,
I think geographically in our current programming, it's definitely the most underserved. But when we look at data for kindergarten enrollment, those kids up there are accessing preschool of some kind. Our data is unclear if it's high quality statewide voluntary preschool or if it's just a daycare that they chose, but they're accessing something before kindergarten. Whereas some of our schools here, more centrally located, they're not accessing anything. So I think that's one consideration for me when I think like, okay, that's a good step one.
I love that response, and it makes me kind of want to break down the region. There's the map on slide 18 where you've got all of these stars, and you've got the lone star up in the north region. That this is a district-wide approach, because I do feel like there's the optics of north not being served well, given that it's the region that has the smallest footprint currently.
Yeah, for sure.
How many classrooms could you get out of JB? And if you take Hoover and Madison and put them here, does that fill it up automatically, or there will be extras?
Yeah, currently we think we can get 12 to 15 classrooms on the first floor here. And so at West you have 16 classrooms. So it starts to move us in the direction of having a comparable size facility as West. That does require some consideration of some of the other programming we're talking about, because there's programming on first floor that we'd have to make sure that we're not displacing, and then understanding the impacts of space concerns for what we provide for some of our supports for those students as well. So the interface of some of our continuum of care that we offer to preschoolers would have happen here, and that could adjust that number a little bit as well.
But if we're taking all of first floor of this building, somebody's going to get displaced.
In some fashion, correct. And then the other thing to keep in mind is, since this formerly operated as a school facility, we are set up with the separated drive lanes for ingress, egress of drop-off, pickup traffic. We do have a playground area. While it might need some modification for the type of equipment, it does reduce the burden of the type of improvements that you have to do here.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I think to directly answer your question, yes, we could expand by moving here. There's 8 classrooms at Hoover and 1 at Madison. So yes, we could expand.
So we'll give you more space.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next part. Oh, Director Boston.
So John, when we're talking about older buildings and everything, from a cost standpoint, you think it's feasible to convert this first floor of this building?
The way we're looking at it is using the rooms that you have available based on the size that they are. There are some spaces that would take some reworking, but there's a good sort of setup of space that makes it easily adaptable, which is for getting the number of classrooms you're trying to hit. That's a much more economical solution than trying to out and out create a facility with that number of classrooms.
And even just adding on to a building, you think this would be more feasible than an add-on?
So part of that is also answered by the geographical location too, because we're talking about expanding the accessibility of the programming as well. And so that makes it a desirable choice.
And then one other thing, could you just give a rough idea? And I'm assuming when you say like Eisenhower, 3 to 4 rooms, Harrison 3 to 6, that's going to be dependent on whether it's just preschool or it's going to be preschool with wraparound services?
Correct. So I think it's whether we're doing the wraparound service, what kind of supports we're doing, and then ultimately the number of classrooms is balancing a little bit of some of the other questions that are being asked, but balancing that target number to make sure we're not creating a deficit for any of our partner sites, or that we're creating enough because we realize there's just not enough option in that region. So that gives us kind of a float of trying to figure out that number.
Which 2 or 3 of these facilities would be more favorable for wraparound services?
Do you want to answer that?
I mean, I think any of them could be. I don't think any building would be more feasible or non-feasible. It's just the kids that enroll there and what their families would need. I think that's always the balance that we try to get the need of our families as early as we can so that we can adapt our programming to meet those needs. Because like was talked about earlier, most families can't do 2.5 hours of preschool and pick them up and take them somewhere or drop them off. So it's really figuring out what those families need, which is definitely a balancing act in the spring.
Thank you. And one last thing, John, can you just give us some ballpark figures as far as, I know there you've got ranges here as far as how many rooms and that, but you said 200 for JB, 120 for Harrison, but can you just go through the, like Eisenhower? Well,
yeah.
What's
so
at West right now?
You're at about 310-ish, correct?
280 to 300.
280 to 300 at West. We think you'd be anywhere from 200 to 250 here, and then you could get potentially 120 at Harrison. We were looking to maybe try to get at least 80 at Eisenhower. If we kept Buffalo, that's 40, 20, and then Hayes is 20. Jackson is 20. So
Okay.
that, as you started to add up the numbers, that's what gets you in that range of 700.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Would the CTE child care, child development from North go to Harrison? Like they could walk there?
So right now, I mean, that's not something we've looked at. Our high school teacher is at Children's Village West. So that's the hard part about that programming. So we could work out something where they did their internship hours there, but they would have to eventually see the high school teacher to get their course, their seat time, if you will, for that course. So it could be something we work out for the internship portion.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Next part.
All right. So real quick before we move on, just on this preschool option, we do have a timeline we'll get to when we sum this up, but we are talking about a little bit of runway so that we can validate all of what we're telling you to make sure that it's feasible, that it's functional, and that it's solving the problem appropriately. So when we get to the timeline, we're trying to create that runway to make sure we can do this right. And so this is kind of the putting the ball on the tee, and then the next thing is for us to then, after your sort of approval to move forward, it's for us to take a swing and see if we can push that ball forward. So for continuum of care, this is a little different, and I'm going to need a lot of help talking about this because we're talking about different kinds of solutions throughout the different types of supports that are needed. And so it's literally taking the recommendation of the FMPC and trying to provide some additional understanding of what that requirement is. And so it's a little bit vague because we haven't identified all the buildings where we're solving this yet. The reason we haven't identified all the buildings is it does require a revisit of how we're looking with our capacities. So what is the available space in our regions to create the solution? What is the level of change needed to the spaces in any of those buildings, and what does that mean to create that solution? So it's gonna take a little bit of extra look. So we'll try to talk you through what this means.
Do you want me to take it away, John?
Go ahead.
Okay. So when we think back to that high incidence, low incident type of disability, our goal is that all buildings will be able to meet that high incident type of disability, right? Learning disabilities, ADHD, some forms of autism, some forms of social emotional behavior, just that high incidence. We want our buildings to be equipped to meet that need everywhere. It's when we get to seeing those more mild or moderate to significant disabilities, and specifically we're seeing that with social emotional behavioral health and intellectual disability and some forms of autism. And so that's where we want to really build out that continuum and have our programming be more intentional and not just, oh, the teacher's there, the teacher's licensed to serve those types of students, right? But we actually want to program around it. So that's where we want to build it out and thinking of that regional model where within the region, for every elementary, there would be a program that met that more moderate to significant need for behavior disabilities and intellectual disabilities. We want our secondary buildings to be equipped to serve the majority of everything, because again, that'll give our students and families more predictability, that even though I might not be able to go to my home elementary building because I have this low incident disability, the moment I enter our schools, I know where my middle school is going to be and I know where my high school is going to be. Right now, we're so reactive year to year that we've had to do a lot of push and pull with our families, and nobody likes that. So that's why I'm really excited about this conversation. And then we ultimately know as a district, we're going to need to have some top level of care for significant need around social, emotional, behavioral health. We currently do that through our Thrive program at DLC, and then around our autism. Any questions with what I just described?
So I think the other cautionary tale in this is we have other programming that we're going to be talking about, and we need to sort of interface that with the consideration of how we make moves with this. So again, we're not overburdening any of our buildings, and that we understand that we're able to utilize the space that we have most appropriately.
Director Beck.
And the Thrive and the Rise are one. Thrive is for Thrive is special education. Rise is general education. Correct.
Correct. Rise could be for any student, and then Thrive is specifically for students with IEPs.
And so when we're putting them in, I mean, we have them in the same building now, right?
Mm-hmm.
How are we making sure that we keep those goals separate, because the goals are different
Mm-hmm.
and the budget's different and everything's different for whether it's special education or not.
Yep.
So how are we doing that?
Yeah. So even though they're located in the same building, they're separate. And Rachel Ivory, who's the principal out there, has incredible leadership in guiding both those programs and meeting the program objectives that we've set out as the district which was based on student need.
Director Potts.
A deficit in our special ed budget. Is there any assurance that implementing this plan is going to have a positive impact on that deficit?
I do have a hypothesis.
It's flashing already.
I do have a hypothesis around that, because given that the needs of our students span all of our buildings, we can't allocate resources efficiently. And I also think that could be potentially where we continue to see the need of our paras at our elementary increase, because we don't have specific programming that's tied to meet those students' needs. So I do think we could become more efficient with our resources, and we can also more target train our teachers and our staff in those programs to better meet the needs of those students. So I do think teacher-wise, I don't think we need less teachers to do this model. We just need to intentionally place them better. But when we think about that support staff that we have in our district right now, I do think there could be efficiencies.
I think the other component of that goes back to this idea that we've been reactive and not proactive. So we're not prescriptive. We don't necessarily know what we're doing where all the time. And by creating a model, it'll allow us to be prescriptive and proactive, which should help improve the efficiency of how we can operate this. It's going to take a minute to figure that out, but the goal would be to not continually be in the red on something like this. Good questions. I'm looking at my computer screen and up here, and they're not the same. So there is a model here of what we would like to explore further. And so when we started talking about big picture timeline, there's some things to start thinking about. With preschool, we did talk about some long runway. And so at the very top of this little graphic timeline, you're seeing that we have a whole lot of work that's still under construction, and we've got a bit before it's done. And so I'm going to skip down to continuum of care. And the thing that we've talked about is we think starting very quickly, we would try to begin identifying locations where we could start coming up with that regional solution for some of our behavioral and intellectual disability programming. We would do so in a way that makes use of facilities that have the capacity to take on that programming. We wouldn't necessarily start implementing physical changes to that space, except for maybe minor changes. But knowing where we're going with it is a big portion of the problem. And then that would set up that next step of that, which would then be beginning to implement those changes that support that programming. And then while we're doing that, that allows us to then start moving into looking at the solutions for our more significant care across our district. So we're kind of cascading this down. Then there's a lot more moving parts with preschool because of some of the big changes we're talking about. So with continuum of care, we think these are things that can start to move into the very next school year. But on preschool, we think there's going to need to be an extra year because there will be some of those physical change things that need to happen. So for example, if you're going to move something to this facility, we have to find a home for programming that's in here. We have to deal with some of the physical changes that need to be done so that we can accept those preschool kiddos. And so we think this is something that sort of goes into place for the start of a 27-28 school year. The step 2 could possibly be the following school year. And then the next phase is actually, we're talking about a considerable pause because there is a lot of data that you have to track. And we do want to make sure that we're on the right path before we jump into more solutions. So that's why you're seeing that later phase as potential and stretched out a bit. No different than when we did the first phase of project implementation. We talked about pauses, measuring ourselves before we're making these moves so that we don't shoot ourselves in the foot or, so to speak, paint ourselves into a corner with any decisions we make.
This is a question for the board. Is there any other information you need before our next meeting when we will vote on this? Dr. Boston, you know?
So I'll put you on the spot, John. So can you just give us a ballpark figure on cost for preschool and then continuum of care? I mean, just a ballpark figure.
I'm not really sure.
Kevin, quote him.
Everybody turn your record button off. When TJ talks about it, we have buildings that have a gym, cafetorium, and we need to separate out a gym or a cafeteria. A cafeteria might have a different cost burden than a gym, but you might have $2 to $4 million to create a gym solution, right? So to build a pod of preschool classrooms, likely you're talking a $3 to $4 million solution there. So you can start to see how we need some runway because we need to make sure we have the ability to fund any of those changes. Changes at this facility, we haven't really dug into yet because we need to do a little bit more analysis, but I don't think it's that kind of magnitude of cost because what we did recognize is there's rooms that are pretty appropriately sized. So that's a little different thing. One of the things we would like to do when we talk about continuum of care is sort of create a kit of parts or a bag of tools. There are some of these solutions that the district can do on their own. So when we talk about retrofitting some classrooms, now granted, not every old building lets you just pull down a wall or move this or that. What we're finding is that you have a series of classrooms that are being used for multiple functions, and there are some right sizing options that work within the four walls of that classroom, which give you the appropriate type of space that the special education staff needs to respond to the need. So we're going to try to right size that in there. So that becomes a sort of a lower tier of cost for creating that solution. It's our more significant care that's going to require a little bit more expense. So when we talk about more moderate to significant BD and ID needs, there's probably going to be a little bit more cost. And we're going to have to really understand, is that something that's carving out space in our building where we have the capacity, or is it, do we need to think out the side of the box and create that in a different way? So we're not quite there yet, which is why we want to kind of give you the overall concept that we're moving towards so that we can start digging in and getting a better handle on what those implications of cost and space demand really are. I hope that's a good enough answer.
You did a lot of stepping around. How about this? How about just compare it to our current project?
You're not in the same ballpark as our current projects.
But I think, man.
Yeah, I just want you to explain what we're voting on then next time.
I think the finances are critical, and in order for us to project out the cost, it also is very dependent on how our current projects finish, how what our bonding power looks like in the 2027-28 school year. So we believe that there's going to be enough money to tackle many of these things that we're proposing. We may have to phase them. And so with the dollars coming through with PEPL and SAVE, if we prioritize, right now Josh is really knocking out the playgrounds, the furniture. Those dollars will be repurposed into a potential larger project like this and smaller renovations. And then that'll also time up, and when you look in that calendar in the 28-29 school year, somewhere in there for us to have a larger conversation that I think the board is curious about, because we think our population will settle in with open enrollments and educational savings accounts and the schools that are coming into our area. We'll know what our population is, and then we'll have a better idea of what we need to do with the rest of our facilities. And so what we're proposing here is what John had talked about before. So the vote would be moving forward with those actions. It's moving preschool here and continuing to explore what that continuum of care looks like. So that's what we're at. So that's what we're asking the board to move forward on at a later date, maybe the next board meeting or the following. And so that's what we're asking. That exact thing we're asking for is that slide previously. I think it's a little bit more ambiguous with the special education component because we need to go and search out what that looks like inside of our buildings. Because when we make the commitment to these buildings, that will then change and alter where we have the ability, potentially have the ability to offer some of our continuum of care components. But I do think we're poised with the finishing of phase one, the launching of phase two, to put those things that we think need to go first. And there's a really good pause in there to determine what's the next step. And I really like that notion of phase one and then steps, and then there's a pause. And so the ability to move forward with that allows us to interact with our staff, community, and different agencies. So.
One last time, anybody need any information? Looks like not. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, superintendent report,
None at this time.
administrative report,
None at this time.
board requests, board reflections, and we're going to start with Director Ward, who this is his last meeting, and so we want to give you a time to.
Yeah, I won't take up too much of your time. I just want to say thank you to the fellow board directors up here. You guys are doing an excellent job, and thank you to the administration. I think that I just have kind of a peek behind the curtain of the Wizard of Oz here and kind of see how things work. And I've really grown a lot of trust and faith in this district and the direction that it's heading. And I'm just very thankful for my time on the board and my opportunities here, and look forward to seeing everything you guys accomplish in the next few years. So thank you.
Thank you. Director Beck.
As usual, I really appreciate the comments of our student board members who aren't here now, but they have some thoughtful questions, interesting points, and kind of keep us on task. And then, of course, we've been talking about preschools for so long, and it's nice to actually start to see some concrete plans come into place to really solve this problem for our district. So I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you. Director Hayes.
I too enjoyed the in-depth preschool discussion. As Director Beck said, we've talked about it, and to actually see it's coming is really refreshing, and to have so many included in it.
Director Boston.
Well, I'd just like to thank Director Ward for his service on the board. I appreciate the time that you spent here, and I would encourage you not to be a stranger.
Director Potts.
I would just, I appreciated the basically we had a single item meeting tonight. It was the facilities plan, and it's a mirror image of the same process we used for phase one. And I really think we owe a complete debt of gratitude to the parents and teachers that put in all this time, effort, and thought to giving us a plan that appears to be very workable.
Director Barnes.
I too would like to thank Director Ward for his service. Appreciate your contributions to the board. And I'd like to echo Director Potts' comments about parental involvement. The conversation tonight was terrific. It was an example of the involvement of stakeholders. And one of the statements that really caught me was that sometimes we have to put aside our self-interest to think about the bigger picture and the value of each one of the students in our district and our families. And I thought that was well represented by the three three parent participants in the campus master plan, because that's what it takes. It takes all of us to think about the common good of our community.
Thank you. Superintendent Smith.
Yeah, I want to thank our leaders that really worked tirelessly at that. Sarah Ott set up every single one of those meetings, reached out to the parents, made sure they had food, the agendas were there, really did an awesome job communicating. Courtney worked tirelessly with our team inside and out to really talk about what's necessary. And Tiffany has done a fantastic job of really setting our preschools on the right path. And it is an impossible job, and we really appreciate you for that. And so the leaders are really set up the ability to listen to our community. And these people that were here were an example of what the whole room was. The gentleman that was here tonight, we asked, would you guys be comfortable briefing the board? And he's like, if I can brief a 2-star general, I can brief the school board. I'm like, okay, you're on every committee I ever want to be a part of. And that's the makeup of that team. And Director Poston was at every meeting, sat in the back, listened, absorbed. So we're excited about that. We also know the challenges that we have in front of us, and we're excited to try and find the best possible solution for our students. And so I know that was long, it was a lot, and we're going to continue to work on it. So I'm just very proud and impressed of our team.
I appreciated the student board members, especially that they are reaching out to their feeder schools and reporting back to us. I always appreciate their insight, and they see things much differently than we do. And I want to thank the people who were on that committee. That was 4 nights that they spent going over this, gave it a lot of thought, and it's the community. This way people don't think, oh, it's just the board, you decided this. We didn't just decide this. These people brought us these ideas. We did not discuss this prior to this. So I really appreciate all the time and effort they put into this. So that was great. And I want to also thank Director Ward. I appreciate everything you did for us. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. This meeting is adjourned. Another one is coming. I've never done this one before. Ooh. Okay, I call the annual meeting of the Board of Directors to order. First up is the annual settlement report. Is that Kevin? Is this Kevin? Do you do the annual settlement report?
Yes. Sorry,
That's not fair.
this blinked out at me and I had to
I
restart.
don't think it's mine.
This is very just a procedurally function that the reorganizational board establishes, that through Iowa code, how we approve bills and how the board president or vice president would so-called audit the bills month to month. It also gives myself and my staff the ability to pay bills on time that would avoid extra charges like your utility fees if they don't measure, if the timing of payment of bills and when they're due don't measure up to when the board agendas happen. We pay them. The board still gets those bills, but it allows us to realistically pay those bills on time. So it's just, this is the format that we use. We look for a recommendation of how we're going to proceed for the year for approving bills. Sorry,
President?
I hit the wrong agenda item. Karen, sorry. I went to C. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So I just told you what item.
Madam President, I move the board approve the annual settlement report as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions for Kevin?
Should we have him present the annual settlement report since he described the next one before we approve it?
My apologies. Everything's catching up. It died on me. See what happens when I take a couple weeks off? Okay. The annual settlement report allows us to invest funds. It's our bank repository, so we're not going to exceed certain amounts. So we list all the banks in the district, a couple others. We have IceJet in there. This is where we ended the year in each of these funds and where our investments reside.
Everybody, okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next up is the annual resolution for payment of bills.
Madam President,
Director Barnes.
move that the board adopt the following resolution for the payment of bills. Be it resolved that in between regular scheduled board meetings, that after bills have been reviewed by the board and verified by the administration, board treasurer, and superintendent, the board president may be authorized to approve payments of claims and warrants drawn on the treasury for the several amounts, including payment of claims and salaries. Be it further resolved, the board will officially approve these warrants at the next regular board meeting, and the warrants will be entered into the minutes of record.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there questions? Is there anything else, Kevin, that you covered it? Okay.
Perfect.
Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next up is designation of financial institutions.
Madam Chair,
Director Poston.
move the board approve the following resolution. Resolved by the Board of Directors of the Davenport Community School District in the counties of Scott and Muscatine, state of Iowa, that the following named financial institutions are hereby designated as depositories of funds for said school district in amounts not to exceed the amounts hereinafter set forth, and the school district's treasurer is hereby authorized to deposit the Davenport Community School District's funds in the amount not to exceed named for said financial institutions as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Brenda, do we have to list all those? No? Okay, good. Anybody questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next up, approval of the legal counsel. Could I have a motion?
Madam President,
Director Beck.
I move to approve using the legal services of Lane and Waterman LLP to represent the corporation and advise the board until the board's annual meeting in 2026.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Could I have a motion to adjourn the annual meeting?
So move.
Could I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay. It was Potts and Barnes. I call to order the organizational meeting of the Board of Directors. The board secretary will report the canvass of votes from the 2025 city school election.
Okay, usually this is pretty straightforward, but we had just a little wrinkle today, so I want to kind of explain something to the board. Please note that the signed abstract of votes for Barnes, Beck, and Potts, not Yankee, contains a Scribner's error. The elections office acknowledged it, and they are going to provide us a corrected version. In fact, I do have a corrected version attached tonight. It's simply unsigned. We anticipate the Board of Canvassers will sign the corrected version on December 2nd, provide a copy to the district. The error does not change the outcome of the election in any way, and we did consult with legal. All that said, and then the signed abstract of votes for Lori Yonke is accurate. All that to be said, I will now read the abstract of votes. We, the undersigned members of the Scott County Board of Canvassers, hereby certify the following to be a true and correct abstract of the votes cast in the city school election held on Tuesday, November 4th, 2025 for Davenport School Director at Large, as shown by the county abstract returns. For Davenport School Directors at Large, Kent Barnes received 6,297 votes. Allison Beck received 8,206 votes. Bruce Potts received 7,313 votes. There was a scattering that received 215 votes. Total votes, 22,031. We therefore declare Kent Barnes duly elected to the office of Davenport School Director at Large for the term of 4 years, beginning Monday, November 24, 2025. Allison Beck, duly elected to the office of Davenport School Director at Large for the term of 4 years, beginning Monday, November 24, 2025. And Bruce Potts, duly elected to the office of Davenport School Director at Large for the term of 4 years, beginning Monday, November 24, 2025. We have a separate abstract of votes, which states, we, the undersigned members of the Scott County Board of Canvassers, hereby certify the following to be a true and correct abstract of the votes cast at the city school election held on Tuesday, November 4th, 2025 for Davenport School Director at Large, as shown by the county abstract returns. Davenport School Director at Large, Lori Yonke received 5,450 votes. Jake Ward received 4,479 votes. There's a scattering that received 63 votes. In total, 9,992 votes were cast. We therefore declare Lori Yonke duly elected to the office of Davenport School Director at Large for the residue of the term ending Friday, December 31, 2027. And Lori, would you like to take your place at the table? And I will now administer the oath of office. Mr. Barnes, will you raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Kent Barnes, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and that I will faithfully and impartially, to the best of my ability, discharge all the duties of the Office of Director for Davenport Community Schools in the County of Scott, Iowa, as now or hereafter required by law. And I will have you sign that in a bit. Dr. Beck, would you please stand, raise your right hand, and repeat after me? I, Allison Beck, do solemnly swear.
I, Allison Beck, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
and that I will faithfully and impartially,
to the best of my ability,
discharge all the duties
of
the Office of Director
for
Davenport Community Schools in the County of Scott, Iowa,
in the County of Scott, Iowa,
as now or hereafter required by law. Thank you. Ms. Yonke, will you stand and raise your right hand and repeat after me? I, Lori Yonke, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
and that I will faithfully and impartially, to the best of my abilities, discharge all of the duties of the Office of Director for Davenport Community Schools in the County of Scott, Iowa, as now or hereafter required by law.
as required by law.
Thank you. Mr. Potts, will you stand, raise your right hand, and repeat after me? I, Bruce Potts, do do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and that I will faithfully and impartially, to the best of my ability, discharge all the duties of the Office of Director for Davenport Community Schools in the County of Scott, Iowa, as now or hereafter required by law. Thank you. I'll have all of you sign those at the end of the meeting. You want me to continue, Karen?
Somebody need to do the recommendation.
Yes. So
Can I do it?
Yeah. Do you want me to just read this quick statement?
I recommend Brenda T., Board Secretary, serve as temporary chair for the election of officers.
Are there any other nominations? Okay, hearing none, nominations are closed. There's no need for a second. And is it the consensus of the board to ask me to serve as the temporary chair? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. All right, I will serve as temporary chair for election of officers. I will explain the rules of order for the voting process for the election of officers. If there's only one nomination, the board will decide whether to vote by a roll call vote or a written ballot. And we will do that now. So I will call each of your names and answer either written ballot or roll call, however you'd like that to proceed. This is if there's only one nomination. Director Postian?
Roll call.
Director Yonke?
Do you want roll call?
Roll call.
Okay. Director Beck?
Roll call.
Director Klein-Jerome?
Roll call.
Director Hayes?
Roll call.
Director Barnes?
Roll call.
And Director Potts.
Roll call.
All right. Since, therefore, if we only have one nomination, we will have consensus by roll call. I'm just going to read this next paragraph. It will require questions if it comes to pass. If there's more than one nomination, the board automatically casts their votes by signed written ballot. You will use the Roman system for this process if there are more than 2 people nominated. So 3 nominations for an office. The first vote is by written ballot. Person with the highest number of votes is not included in the second ballot. The second ballot or second vote is between the 2 people with the lower number of votes. And then the third ballot is the winner of the first, the winner of the second, and then that person will be yes. Okay. So then that person would be chosen as president. It does require that if 2 or more persons are nominated, each person be given a few moments to share the reasons why they should be elected also. So if that comes into being, we'll review those rules. So we will start with the election of president. May I have a nomination for the office of president? Director Potts?
I nominate Karen Klein-Jerome.
Second.
I move nomination cease.
Okay. Director Klein-Jerome, do you accept the nomination?
Yes.
Hearing no more nominations, nominations are declared closed. Since there's only one person nominated, is it your wish for the board to elect Karen Klein-Jerome as president? When I call your name, just answer yes or no. Director Postian?
Yes.
Director Barnes?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Yonke?
Yes.
Director Potts?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
And Director Klein-Jerome?
Yes.
I therefore declare Karen Klein-Jerome president of Davenport School Board until November 2026. Yay, Karen. Okay, election of vice president. I'm not going to read the rules again, so we'll move on there. May I have a nomination for the office of vice president?
I nominate Kent Postian.
Director Klein-Jerome nominates Kent Postian. Director Postian, do you accept the nomination? Are there any other nominations for the office of vice president? Seeing and hearing none, nominations are declared closed. Since there's only one person, is it your wish for the board to elect Kent Postian as vice president? When I call your name, just answer yes or no, please. Director Poston,
Yes.
Director Barnes,
Yes.
Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Yonke,
Yes.
Director Potts,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
and Director Kleinschrom.
Yes.
I therefore declare Kent Poston Vice President of Davenport School Board until November 2026. I will now give the oath of office to the President and Vice President. President Klein-Jerome, would you stand and raise your right hand and repeat after me? I, Karen Klein-Jerome,
I, Karen Klein Jerome,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
to support the Constitution of the United States
to support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
to discharge the duties of the office
to discharge the duties of the office
of School Board President
of School Board President
in the Davenport Community School District
in the Davenport Community School District
as now or hereafter required by law.
as now or hereafter required by law.
Thank you, and I will have you sign that at the end of the meeting. Vice President Poston, would you please stand, raise your right hand, and repeat after me? I'm sorry, I should have provided you guys copies too. I thought you wouldn't see it, Bruce. I, Kent Poston, do solemnly swear to support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and that I will faithfully and impartially, to the best of my ability, discharge the duties of the Office of School Board Vice President in the Davenport Community School District as now or hereafter required by law. Thank you, and I will have you sign that at the end of the meeting. And that concludes my part of the meeting. I hand the office back over to the president.
Thank you. You all know, well, it's in your agenda, what committees there are. If you want to change a committee or drop off a committee, would you please email me by Friday or next Monday? Otherwise, I'm just going to keep you on the committees you're currently on, because some of you have long invested, and I'm sure you wouldn't want to give them up at this point. And then next up, the board will take action on the calendar of board meetings for December 2025 through November 2026.
Madam President,
Director Potts.
I move to approve the 2025-2026 board calendar as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Director Potts.
Second.
Director Beck.
I didn't have that on a piece of paper, though. I had to remember it.
I gotta have paper. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Meeting adjourned.
Welcome to the team, Director Young.
Yeah. I know, that's what I. That's exactly what I thought. I'm like, oh my